Roentgenium? Rutgenium.
Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast on Sunday, the 9th of February, 2014. I'm your host, Dan Train. Joining me today, Robert Kemp. And Zachary Burgess.
He made a noise. It was nearly a word at some point.
How are you supposed to pronounce that?
What was it? Roentgenium or something?
Roentgenium? Roentgenium? It's like Roentgenium.
That guy was called Röntgen, wasn't he?
Röntgen.
The guy that it's named after, obviously. Because it's
Where
one
was
of
he
those
from?
elements. Probably like Denmark or something.
Okay.
Yeah, that guy.
The guy with the beard, like all chemists.
Oh no, wait, that's not him. That's the guy who made it rather than the guy it's named after. Wait, or is it named after a place?
No, that is physicist Wilhelm Röntgen.
Oh, but it's a German name, so the O should have an umlaut, except for it doesn't on the element. That's probably why.
But then is that pronounced Ront like that?
Well, no, but in the element it's O-E, whereas in his name it's just the O umlaut. So they've tried to recreate the umlaut by putting an O-E.
But that's not even the same sound.
Oh yeah, it is Runt. Runt or Runt.
It's more like, it's a long O for the umlaut O.
Yeah. Runtgenium.
That's why that looks weird. Because apparently in scientific naming convention for elements, you weren't allowed to have accents on letters.
Wait, is that one of those elements that's not actually been discovered? Or like, they know it's there, but they haven't, because like things are like
you have to actually synthesize it for it to be on the chart, right?
It's not up in the 113s, is it? It's only 111. That must be one of the last ones that they've bothered to name. One of the last elements that actually has a stable form that lasts long enough to care about, rather than all the ones past 113 which decay in like a millisecond. So no one really gives a shit about those.
But they still made them for that.
Yeah, they still made
half a millisecond or whatever. Yeah, I don't think you can say, "Oh, this probably exists," and not have made it for a millisecond and put it on the chart. It has to be made.
It was just the way they described the category as unknown, probably transition metal.
Well, it's because it fits in the periodic table under the transition metals.
Yeah, true.
But if it doesn't exist, what is its half-life? Why does this table not have a really obvious thing that tells you its half-life?
The last page probably did. Wolfram probably had it. There you go, 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Oh, that's quite a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's why it has a name, clearly.
Convenient. So, elementary.
Science time over.
Science time is over. What time is it now?
Yeah, no more science is allowed for the next 2 hours.
Oh dear, we have to get all the science out of the way.
Has anyone got any science stuck in their system just waiting to burst forth?
Well, I heard Stephen Hawking said that there aren't any event horizons in like a paper which was like two pages long or something, which you can't really blame him for, considering it takes him forever to talk. Well, he was like saying that instead of a proper event horizon where information is lost or whatever, because he's been working, his whole career is on black holes basically, right?
Yeah,
and that Hawking radiation stuff made his name, and is probably his most significant contribution to science is the Hawking radiation stuff. But he's saying instead of an actual event horizon that actually means that information ends up lost in there, it's just an apparent horizon, and actually light gets absorbed into a black hole can eventually escape just after very, very long time. So that
was just what the Hawking radiation was basically for. That was like the fix for the information paradox, basically. It was like nothing could come out apart from the radiation inherits the information of the stuff that's falling in, basically.
Yeah, but I think this is something new, right? Because the Hawking radiation was like based on, because like the two particles randomly appear right that are entangled, and one is on the inside of the event horizon and is lost, and the other one is on the outside, but it's still entangled, right?
Yeah,
the other one?
That's how the information doesn't get destroyed, basically.
Right. But he's saying something,
he's saying another thing that's sort of similar. But
basically, apparently there were some dudes recently who said, because apparently traditionally, like when you're falling into the event horizon, when you pass it, you don't really notice anything special happening. It's not like some. Obviously,
because
it is very
it's
important.
not like an actual physical object.
Exactly.
It's not like you hit a sudden wall and
sudden wall.
Oh.
But these other dudes,
everything past this point has gone black.
Recently, these other dudes are saying, yes, it is like a wall, and it's like a firewall, and you like burn up almost immediately the moment that you hit it.
Well, that's probably also sort of true because of just the gravitational forces. Everything is destroyed at that point anyway.
No, it's apart
you get torn apart.
Well, not necessarily. Depending on the size of the black hole, you might not even notice
because it's quite shallow.
Yeah, because the tidal forces might not be that strong when you pass the event horizon of the supermassive black hole in the middle of the galaxy. It's so big. Well, the event horizon is so, diameter is so massive that the actual local gravitational forces when you pass through it are actually not enough to.
But does this mean you'll inevitably be fucked?
Well, if it is a true event horizon, then yes, you are inevitably fucked.
You wouldn't know you were boned. Oh, that's the worst.
No, exactly.
That's not the worst at all.
Because there must come a point, like some moment after that, where you're just like, oh crap!
Oh crap!
I passed the event horizon.
But how would you tell? You wouldn't be able to see anything outside. Oh, wait, no, you would be able to see things outside, right?
Because someone send a message in.
They could, I guess, but it could never get back out.
You get a radio signal, and from base say, "Yeah, you're past the event horizon. See you later. We can't hear you anymore."
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much.
If you get this, enjoy the last couple of minutes you have left, and I don't know, play some windjammers.
Maybe.
It's not going to be a couple of minutes though. If you're falling into a really big black hole, that's going to take a long ass time, isn't it? Yeah,
I guess. The Hollywood would be a couple of minutes.
I mean, I wonder if you could orbit the black hole within the event horizon. Because it's still a mass,
don't think
right?
You can you? Because the whole point of the event horizon is that's where light falls inwards.
Yeah, the light could spin around and around within time.
Yeah, it could go around for a long time. Yeah, but it would always be going down inwards.
Yeah, it would never come out.
Wouldn't be I guess it wouldn't be a perfect
orbit. So you
orbit.
can technically orbit it.
Yeah,
it'd be a decaying orbit.
Decaying orbit, yeah, I suppose. Except the decaying orbits are normally, with the way we think of them, are caused by kind of air resistance, right? Like the geostationary orbits don't decay, do they?
Well, I guess the only way you could achieve proper orbit is by going faster than light.
Yeah, that's what we were saying, basically. It's like, no, you can't orbit the black hole inside the event horizon because you'd have to be going faster than light.
Yeah, that's true. I guess you just spiral in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what saying they're on the event horizon ain't no horizon.
Which is sort of what he'd already said before, I guess. He's just saying it in a different way now.
Well, I don't know.
To counter those new guys who came along and said, no, you spontaneously combust for some reason. Physics.
Well, the dudes on the video that I was watching from University of Nottingham, they were basically saying that if there's no event horizon, well, as far as they're concerned, the event horizon basically defines a black hole. So without one of those, then it's not really, there aren't really black holes, in the sense that everyone had always thought.
What does that mean? Because the event horizon isn't a thing. It's just a construct. It's just like a line.
Yeah, but that construct is what makes it. It may not be a physical thing, but that construct.
Yeah, but what are they saying? What are they saying that isn't possible about it? Because it makes perfect sense. Well,
yeah,
perfect sense.
Sure.
Would it be that if I sort of see that it could be a weird sort of like phase, like you pass through it and then everything is a bit messed up because maybe you're catching like orbiting photons.
I don't think that's necessarily that unusual.
But there could be a lot of them. Like we don't really know. So all of a sudden you're blinded by random light.
I guess
coming from everywhere.
Yeah, I guess that would be quite weird because, like, if you were just looking in like a different direction, you theoretically could be seeing things from all different kinds of directions because the photons have just spiraled casually into your eyes at that precise angle.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be okay for your close distance stuff, I guess, until you got really close to the epicenter, I suppose.
Yeah,
but but yeah, if you looked out the window, it might be all kinds of messed up. You probably see dinosaurs.
Yeah, of course. That's exactly what you mean. Oh dear.
Time travel.
So anyway, science time.
Yeah, that was science time. It got much worse after we actually tried to discuss any science.
Sorry about that.
I hold you entirely responsible.
I did come across a maths time video a couple of weeks ago, which was mildly mind-blowing, which was a simple proof that if you add up all the natural numbers from 1 to infinity, right? So if you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way to infinity, you end up with an answer. And the answer is minus a 12th.
What?
Yeah. And he proves it, like with several different methods to prove this. Anyway, so there you
Isn't
go.
that just basically proving that mathematics is kind of broken?
Well, it depends how you think about it.
Yeah, because it's like if you're adding things and you end up with a negative number, I'm fairly sure that's broken.
Yeah, or you add positive numbers.
Did he use a computer that had a really bad, high boundary?
Yeah, it just used at some point. It's like, we went over 256, and that's subtracting.
He just use a pen and paper to prove it. Anyway, so I'll send you that video. It's on the same people, I think, from the Nottingham, I think. Anyway, so that's quite interesting.
So
go forth, listeners.
So they're fighting against Stephen Hawking. They must be wrong.
Well, exactly. I don't know how much Stephen Hawking has really done since he came up with that Hawking radiation thing back in the 80s or 70s, was it? I don't know. Anyway.
Been on the Vomit Comet.
Yeah.
That's true. Oh, he's been a cool, awesome ambassador for science and stuff, and it's amazing that he's still even alive.
And Specsavers.
It's amazing. I don't know what he's actually done in theoretical physics. Because it must be really hard to work if you can't write things down. Talk and, yeah. Anyway, science.
Probably
and
why,
weird maths.
if he has had something, it'll come up with something. He's probably in the process of writing it still very slowly.
Yeah. Well, that's why the book was so short. They came out with last week was so short. It's quite hard to write stuff.
Oh, apologies for my coughing in advance. It's still here.
Grr.
It's still here.
Why can't science solve these problems? Coughing.
Because
that's more like biology.
What's the thing?
That is a kind
it's still
of
science.
You have a cough sweet, and it's only really effective while you're sucking it. So the action of sucking is what solves coughs.
Don't know about that.
But then when you have that tickly cough syrup stuff, because it's what it is, a tickly cough. You have that stuff, and it only really works for about 20 minutes, if that.
Well, I'm never convinced about the tickly.
No, I'm not sure
cough
it works
stuff because
at all.
it doesn't. What is it even doing? Because
it's not going near your throat, is it? Because you're swallowing it.
Yeah, it's going down the esophagus and not the windpipe, which is presumably where the irritation is going.
That's kind of the same thing with cough sweets, because cough sweets have a sort of light anesthetic.
Yeah, presumably that's what does it. It must just
spreads.
It must just go into the membrane between the two.
Well, the fact that
be
it's
sufficiently
dissolving in your mouth and then you inhale, maybe you're pulling some of the dissolved gas.
If it's methylated or something.
Yeah, something like that. So
I was on an Ask Science Reddit thread the other day that was apparently full of pharmacists, and basically there's only a few.
Everything is bollocks.
Well, they were saying
every drug is fake.
It's all placebo.
No, it's not quite that. Well, a lot of it is all the drugs are the same, right? It's just different combinations of stuff. But basically, it seems like there are effective cough suppressants, but they're all over the counter because they're all open to abuse. So anything you get that isn't over the counter isn't any use. You have to get stuff that's from the pharmacist, and then it works. And that's true of decongestant as well, because
that could block the choking reflex or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, it's not, because not abuse in that sense, but as in people get high or whatever. So.
Oh no, I was wondering if you could use it for a
for murder.
Yeah, basically.
You can use it to murder someone.
That's another reason that they look at you and they say,
and they didn't know it because they didn't.
Are you
going to
murder that guy? Yeah, that's another reason why it's controlled. In case Rob decides to murder someone.
Don't make drowning reasonable.
No, it wouldn't.
It would be slightly less terrifying, I suppose.
No, because it's not the choking that's the bad part. It's the water interacting with your lung tissue that's the bad part.
Yeah.
Once it goes in there, that's where the bad shit starts.
And famously, the other thing is that you can't get decent decongestion, in the shop. You have to buy it over the counter because people make crystal meth out of Sudafed, or they used to.
Oh, really?
So now Sudafed, you can still buy Sudafed, but it's got stuff in it that doesn't work very well, and people still buy it because it used to work. I suppose.
Sudafed.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but
I wonder if that's true of Lemsip, because everyone claims that and that doesn't work.
Well, Lemsip is just paracetamol, I think. right?
In a hot lemon drink.
In a hot lemon drink, yeah. So that works, but I mean, you might as well just take paracetamol. Unless you like that.
I think the hot lemon is probably the more important part of that.
It's sort of placebo again, isn't it? Because it's just a hot drink. That's like
the hotness of the drink is the important part.
You might as well have a coffee because caffeine is in most of these cold reliefs as well.
That's true. Well, what I always do is because no one says you can't mix paracetamol and ibuprofen, but you can only have one. They both say on the packet only take every 4 hours. So every 2 hours I take the alternate one. And then I drink coffee. That works.
Yeah, that's allowed. That's because they're sort of separate in some way. They don't really have the.
Or you hope they are.
Yeah, someone described it to me once how exactly it works, and they are kind of exclusive in their effect, which is interesting. They don't really.
But they kind of treat the same symptoms as well.
Yeah.
So it's cool. They obviously have different chemistry.
I think ibuprofen is slightly more effective at sort of muscular pain. Whereas paracetamol is sort of a more general purpose, was my understanding. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's kind of how I've always read into it.
It sounds vaguely about right. I mean, they're both basically analgesics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it works.
Science time over again.
Oh.
Yeah, we made it even worse by talking about biology, which all of us have even less idea about what the fuck we're talking about. Physics, we always have legitimate knowledge.
I have a biology A level. I haven't used any of until now.
Yeah, Rob's got more. We've both got physics A levels, right?
Yeah, and chemistry.
Zach, and you've got
chemistry.
Sorry,
chemistry. I've got physics, maths, biology.
Yeah.
There we go. So Rob's got 2 science A levels. That's more than us.
Yeah, well, I've got 2. Just the other 2.
Did you do chemistry?
Yeah.
Zach. Oh yeah,
we would have needed it for his chemical degree.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember all that titration shit you had to do. Oh yeah, and you did
not that much titration. I always fear titration. Yeah.
What's titration?
That's that thing where you have the really long thing, like test tube thing with a little handle at the bottom, and you have to let out a single drip at a time until it neutralizes the acid or whatever.
I remember that.
God, titration sucks so bad. It's like every time that I've gone into like an interview in a school or whatever, it's like. They're going to fucking ask about titration, aren't they? Because that's the only thing that schools do. Luckily, it's actually easy once you know what the fuck you're doing.
Mm.
And the last time I did it, I did a thing where they were talking about titration. They didn't make you do the titration. It was just like, collect the equipment that you need to do a titration, but don't actually do it.
Okay. Is this to be like a lab assistant or something, or in a school?
It was like
have you ever got to actually do that?
What do you mean? The actual interview thing? The actual test part. Yeah,
no,
that was one of the things that I'm better at. Maybe because last time I did it, I went in and there was like 2 people who were already lab assistants from some other place. And it was like, well, shit, this is looking great for the rest of us. And there was like 5 people who had no idea what the fuck they were doing. But I had the most no idea what I was doing because I looked on the internet and looked up GCSE bite size the night before and just read through all the topics and was like, okay, I can remember how to do most of those things, solved. And then I proceeded to get most of the stuff right, and no one else did.
Great success.
Yep, so interview techniques.
Use GCSE.
Use the BBC's GCSE bite-size information to learn about what they're going to inevitably ask you.
So did they hire you?
No.
Why not?
Because they hired one of those 2 people who were already
who'd done it before.
Yeah, I mean, you would, wouldn't you, I guess?
Yeah.
Especially if they're claiming the same salary.
I was in the last 3 with those 2. So.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yep. That was like my best interview ever, I guess.
It's just a success.
When was that?
I don't know, quite a while ago.
So is that one of the job aspects you're seriously looking at then? Like,
I guess.
Yeah, it's a cool one.
It's applicable.
Yeah.
Apparently, I can do it better than these other 4 guys.
You could probably do
like business graduates or something.
Oh,
I guess there's no jobs for them as well.
Business.
You could probably do most stuff better than most people, to be honest, Zach.
Yeah, I guess so. So there you go. That's science. News.
So news. This is a podcast about video games. If you are just tuning in,
20 minutes late.
That's 20 minutes in. We've gone sometimes.
No, that's true. And what news is there in the world of video games?
Should we just start with the best news?
Yeah.
That Rob just wants to talk about so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
The third in the Nintendo and Sega partnership of Sonic-related games has been announced. It is Sonic Boom.
Sonic
and
Boom.
It looks weird.
They've done a kind of a weird, they've handed it off to like a
Red Moon.
I thought it was red button.
I thought it was Red Moon.
Well, red something.
Whoever, yeah.
How the fuck have they been making Sonic games for like 25 years and never called something Sonic Boom?
Well, they called the soundtrack CD for Sonic CD was called Sonic Boom because one of the songs on it.
Yeah, the title track was called Sonic Boom, which they had a licensing problem with for the re-release for some reason because they didn't have the lyrical version. They had to use the instrumental.
Right. It was because of the singers, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Developer, ex-Naughty Dog, Big Red Button.
It is Big Red Button. Okay, sorry, I thought it was Red Moon.
Yeah. Ex-Naughty Dog.
Ex-Naughty Dog, basically. And judging by the tiny bit of the game that we've seen so far, which is like not really any gameplay.
No, and like the snippets are all less than a second, so it's really hard to tell what's happening.
But judging by the looks of it, it's probably going to be something similar to the Naughty Dog style Jak and Daxter, or is it Ratchet and Clank? 4-player platforming game.
No, it's Jak and Daxter. Is Naughty Dog? Yeah.
I always get those two confused.
I think, what's it? The other one is Insomniac?
Yeah. But yeah, they've done like 4-player platforming adventure game type things before, assuming that these guys were still there when they were doing that, which I think they probably were.
I guess maybe they got bored of all this gritty drama and Indiana Jones.
Maybe.
Well, this sounds promising, doesn't it? Is it on Crytek?
But it looks weird.
Right? It does look weird, though. Like, the gameplay seems to have elements from Sonic Heroes,
maybe.
Which is sort of worrying.
Yeah.
Because I was not...
Because that didn't work very well in Sonic Heroes.
I was not a big fan of that. And it's...
Is it starting from scratch? Are they using, like, asset? Oh, no. I mean...
Well, no, they're not. They can't be using the models, because that's one of the things everyone's talking about, is that the character designs are kind of messed up, but in a sort of weird way. Like, Sonic's face is a bit wrong, especially his lips. I don't know what it is. They look kind of pouty.
I think it looks worse in the trailer footage, and slightly better in the like
the marketing shots.
No, the cartoon.
Oh yeah, because this is the other thing. There's a CGI cartoon to go with it.
Oh,
the
bit
of that I've seen looks better than that bit in the game trailer for some reason. I think.
And Knuckles looks fucking roided.
Yeah, Knuckles is huge now.
It's hilarious.
Oh, I see it. I brought it up. Knuckles is gigantic.
It's
top like the Barrett of the team.
Yeah, it's really funny. Perhaps now it will suit his voice a bit more.
So that's not his voice any longer, really, though, is it?
No, I guess not.
Or it never
the drawn versions of the concept art where they're drawn, they look pretty cool. You know, where Sonic's got like a snood thing.
For some reason.
I don't know if that
bandages everywhere.
Yeah, obviously. That's the anime style, right? I guess.
Apparently.
I don't know.
So yeah, that would be weird.
So so it seems to show a bit of running, a bit of combat, a bit of adventure platformy type stuff. It's hard to know how it's going to gel.
Yeah, and it also looks like, I mean, each of the characters clearly has unique abilities, as you would expect, because it's fucking Knuckles.
Yeah, they're all different.
But then that's like, how does that work? Well, it's like, how does that work both as a single-player game? It's like, are you switching between them? And as a multiplayer game, it's like, do you have to like take a break and just let one guy go off and do something? I don't know. I guess they haven't said whether it's single or multiplayer or both. But it's on Wii U, so I'm assuming multiplayer.
Yeah.
Did I hear it was using the Crytek engine? I know that sounds mental.
That, but yeah.
Because I saw
maybe
somebody posted that John Carmack had tweeted at them saying it's like, hey, we're using the Cry engine or whatever, and John Carmack tweeted at them saying, just remember that a Sonic game that isn't locked to 60 frames per second is a crime against nature.
Yep.
Good for him. Yeah, that's exactly how it should be.
Well, judged by this news report,
it is CryEngine 3. Yeah,
but it's also coming out on the 3DS, so I wonder what engine that will run.
Well, the 3DS version is also being developed by someone else.
Well, yeah, as you'd expect.
Yeah, who is the Sly Cooper team apparently.
Yes, someone who has more familiarity with 3DS apparently.
So this has a lot of dramatic, crazy ass potential.
Well, it does, yeah, because it's a different studio, therefore you can't put it in the same category as Sonic Team's recent outings.
No.
So you can't hold that against them.
If a Western developed Sonic,
engine, so you can't hold it against Hedgehog Engine.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Western team as well. That's important. Ex-Naughty Dog. That's quite good.
And they're making a sudden hella push for rebooting with the cartoon as well.
And they're making an effort of saying that it's a whole parallel universe type thing. Although we're not sure if that's a reboot style thing, or if they're just saying, if it's going to be a storyline that goes to another different universe, as they tend to.
Yeah, as they tend to.
So it's all of this sounds intriguing, apart from the Wii U exclusivity, I suppose. But
what's wrong with that, though?
I don't know.
That probably won't last. I'd be surprised.
They're pulling CryEngine out of the bag, man. Run that on an Xbox One.
It's not like the Wii U couldn't run it, probably. I don't know what the highest engine that was on. I mean, they did that Batman game, but I don't know what engine that was on.
There were versions of Crysis on last-gen consoles, but
I'm talking about the Wii U specifically.
Well, I don't know.
I think if they pull this off, which they could well do, being as they're ex-Naughty Dog or whatever, then it will be awesome for Sonic, but it's going to be another kind of embarrassing kind of death knell on the kind of Japanese games industry, really. I mean, if you look
on the whole, I suppose.
On the whole, yeah.
It's weird.
I mean,
because
our Devil May Cry's are better. Our Metroids are better.
It's weird because it doesn't look good against Sonic Team either, and I know they haven't exactly had a great run of it, but it sort of shows, hey, other people can do Sonic games better than you can.
Yeah, but the question
is, fucking Sonic Team.
Yeah.
The question is it really the Sonic game that we want? Because I still like Generations and everything. I still like speedy, tricky, jumping Sonic.
Yeah, Generations is a fantastic game.
Whereas it's sort of the same as Mario, where it's just once you got to the Wii Marios, or it's multiplayer weird platforming, it's fine, but I think Mario Galaxy was the better offshoot.
I know what you mean, yeah. It's probably... I'm looking at it in the sense that it's probably going to be a good game, but I'm not sure it will be a thoroughbred Sonic game.
No.
If that means anything. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe this is a bit of Sega saying, you know what, Sonic doesn't do that well for us anymore. The only reason it does well is because we put so many of them out. Maybe they're sort of realising, maybe if we dial it back and try a different... In fairness, because they have been trying different approaches. Lost World is a different Sonic game.
Yeah.
It's been a bit polarising, but hey, they're trying. Which is unusual.
But I don't want them to try. I want them to continue making the ones that are actually good.
Yeah, we want to see a good... I still want to see a good 2D Sonic game come out. Sonic 4 doesn't count.
No, because it was bad.
It should have been Sonic 4, right?
Yeah, it really should have been, but it just wasn't there. I mean, elements of Sonic Colors and elements of Generations have that, but they need to go back to the Rush formula.
Yeah, basically.
Or at least make something different in the Rush sort of vein, perhaps evolve that somehow.
Because there was the elements of that in Colors on the DS, but it wasn't as good. They somehow fucked it up.
Because it's still Dimps running the show, isn't it, for those games on DS?
I don't know about that.
I think Dimps has sort of worked on all of the recent Sonic games in a sort of level designy sort of way. Even the full console stuff. They've sort of been involved, but
I think we discussed plenty about why Sonic Colors on 3DS wasn't as good as Rush.
Yeah. Bring back Rush.
It's weird though, because it's just we want a very specific kind of Sonic game.
Yeah.
Because we actually like the speedy boostiness and tricks and all that stuff.
I still wouldn't mind. Sonic 4 was kind of... The disappointment of Sonic 4 was that I still like the original trio. Well, 4 if you count Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah.
With Sonic 3, with the Knuckles added on, as possibly being the best ever of all the Sonic games. And it's I'd be quite happy with them to revisit that sort of fast platforming hybrid that those games kind of all were. But they just didn't do it in Sonic 4.
It's they tried to do it, except that they
I don't even know how it's bad, but it just is.
In Sonic 4, they tried to cram little extra things in that just broke up the flow way too much.
Yeah,
it's the old classic problem of random just stop and here's some platforms over a death bit.
Yeah, or that one level you showed me on, was it Sonic Generations 3DS, where there's just a pointless pillar in the middle of it that you just have to jump over, and it's quite annoying to get over. And it's well, why did you put that there?
It's just they haven't. I mean, I keep trying to think of think back to Sonic 3, and I don't think there was very many times where that sort of thing would happen.
Well, I suppose there's a couple of places where they force you to stop because there's going to be a somewhat tricky jump coming up, but and the enemy placement was the thing you had to try and remember, I guess, if you wanted a smooth run, because you couldn't just boost for everything. Then you had to.
Oh yeah, but they didn't normally put enemies right in your way as much.
Oh no, not on the edge of a platform or stuff like that. I mean, I guess the most egregious case of bad enemy placement was on Sonic 2 in the. I can never remember what it's called, but the one with all the gears.
Yeah.
Because you got those star.
Well, the bastards that just follow you around.
Yeah, they follow you around and then they burst in 5 directions.
Yeah, those things suck.
The spikes pass through walls and stuff, and that was just evil. But a couple of them were in just the right place where if you just kept running, one of the little spikes that they burst would just hit you every time unless you dealt with it.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I like how there's already a blog on this. We're just searching the Sonic Boom news stories, and there's just a blog on the third place down. It's like, what makes Sonic Boom a worthy Sonic? It's like, they're already discussing that, and it's like, all they've had is this tiny bit of preview footage.
Yeah, we'll find out. I have a good feeling, but who knows? I don't know. Yeah, I didn't play those Jak and Daxter stuff.
It will give Rob something to buy on the Wii U when he has to buy it from Smash Brothers.
Yeah, along with Lost World and Mario. So.
Wii U exclusives is good for the Wii U, obviously. Funnily enough.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that segues into another bit of news, because there was Iwata coming out saying a load of stuff after they had a board meeting, I suppose it was.
A bad financial call, didn't they?
Yeah, because they went and had a proper executive. I don't know. Let's thrash this out meeting, I suppose, and on the back end of that, Iwata comes out and says some weird stuff. Let's be honest. There's some weird things coming out of what Iwata said there, because he kind of on the plus side, it's obvious Ninty know what we know now. They were making the same postulations about why the Wii U is failing that everyone is. That it's
the
like
Smash Bros. Hasn't come out.
The Smash Bros. Hasn't come out. No, that they just haven't. For whatever reason, the Wii U just isn't appealing. Part of that is because of their marketing strategy. Part of that is because of their brand confusion created by the tablet, and the fact that the tablet may have been a bad idea. They've basically just come out and sort of just admitted that. It's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we didn't get it this time.
Yeah. I sympathise with them because they had to try something new because they had that big success with the Wiimote. But it's like, well, how do you follow that shit? I mean, you can't just copy the Kinect or whatever. Even if you wanted to, that probably couldn't do it because of the research involved.
They probably would have done just quite a lot better had they. Would they have done better? That's the thing. Like, you couldn't. Everyone, if they hadn't called it the Wii U, say they called it a new name, like the Nintendo Game Table. I don't know.
The revolution.
I can't even think of what you'd call it. The Tablono thing.
Tablono thing. I'm buying that. Smash Brothers on the Nintendo Tablono thing.
Or they could have just as well called it the Mario box. It would have been fine. The Marionosphere.
So is that the Kemp Industries equivalent of the iPad? Is the Tablono thing?
Why has no one just made something called the tablet? Like, just trademark the word tablet.
Because that's always a terrible thing to try and do.
The tablet. This is the tablet. You want this one. Tablono thing. Yeah.
The O'Connor Gamesphere.
Robco, screen in your hands, fucker.
Robco.
Screen in your hands.
Robco Tablono thing. Not waiting to find one of those. Anyway, so the Wii U.
Yeah, so they came out and said, well,
something else.
I guess the weirdest thing they said was that they ended up talking about some of the things that Nintendo have been investigating, like not in the gaming space. So one of those things that they came out with was non-wearable fitness things. And like the graph they showed is utterly bizarre because they go through showing like a series, like a console, and then they said the Wii Fit board, and then they moved on to saying something like wearable fitness things, like Fitbit, I suppose, and things like that, saying this is where current technology is. And then the next thing they say is non-wearable in like a blue, no graphics or anything, just like a blue circle that says non-wearable, and it's like. The console was the non-wearable.
Yeah, the Wii Fit board is not non-wearable.
So what on earth do they mean by that?
Maybe they're just trying to say...
inject it into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
If it's inside you, you're not wearing it.
The vitality sensor is now a chip. Just hook it to my brain. Yeah,
well,
implants.
I wouldn't be surprised if Valve try something like that, the way they're talking recently.
They put accelerometers in your forearm.
Yep.
So you no longer need a Wiimote.
That'd be kind of cool.
Would solve all these crappy motion problems, I suppose, if you just had like motion sensors in your fingers.
Built-in tracking.
I don't think it would solve those problems.
But it might make it a little easier. Especially if they can like glow and like give out infrared pulses so it knows which finger's which.
So didn't they say something about like potentially making like cut down mobile games that try and get you to buy the full blown game on the DS?
They did, yeah. It was the gist they gave was that they were going to investigate the mobile space, but they weren't going to make games. The gist was that it sounded like they were just going to release promotional material, potentially licensing out the Nintendo characters for things. I
would hope that. I don't know if this is probably isn't the case at all, but I would hope that Nintendo make games for the frickin' Xbox before they make games for the iOS or Android or whatever. Yeah, because I think it's a weird admonition in one sense, saying that admission, I guess. What's the word?
What?
Admission is the word.
Is a word.
Admonish is
a
word. Admonish is a word, but it means something else.
Okay, yeah, they've made the admission that they realise the mobile space is big, but in the same breath, the 3DS is what's making them money right now.
It's big and it's shallow as hell. Like,
yeah,
all these dumb games that like to have any permanence or whatever. I don't know.
That's what I mean. Mobile space is like it's not a serious gaming platform. There is the occasional good game for it, like The Room and some of the adventure stuff comes out on them pretty good. Like apparently The Walking Dead is actually reasonable on the iPad, that kind of thing. But it's not. You wouldn't go there if you're a serious gamer, really.
They're not the ones that are making all the money, are they? Weirdly,
I know. Even though I've had an iPad and I've played Infinity Blade 1 and 2 and stuff, nothing's ever really grabbed me on it. I've never stuck with anything on the iPad.
Except
I guess I played. I guess I played for Anomaly. Might have been the biggest game I've actually. Well, that and Infinity Blade.
Would you have played a Final Fantasy style game if they weren't incredibly expensive?
Well, see, I don't know. I did consider Final Fantasy Tactics at one point because I thought maybe the touchscreen might actually be a good way of playing that.
I'm tempted to buy Final Fantasy VI,
do that right,
which just came out on iOS. That's news. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
it was on Android last week or something, and now it's on, so you can buy it for iPhone or whatever.
Yeah, it was inevitable, really, because it's one of the most praised Final Fantasies, and yet they've released like 1, 2, and 3.
Because I haven't played 6 because I didn't have a SNES or whatever.
I played like the first 10 hours of it because I had the PS1 re-release.
Oh yeah,
where they added FMV.
Well, I don't know if the FMV's in this phone version, but it's got like updated sprites and shit, which look a bit strange.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, yeah, they've redone. I don't think they've redone the backgrounds, but they've redone the characters and stuff, so it looks a little bit strange. But yeah, it's not just a straight port, obviously, because it's got touch controls and stuff. But they've also up-resed not replaced anyway. It's not just up, It's not just resized and kind of smoothed. It's actually replaced artwork and stuff from Square Enix. Anyway,
maybe, yes. but then the I don't know. The flip side to that is I don't see myself ever spending that much time on a mobile device. like to actually playing a full-on Final Fantasy game. I'd rather sit on the couch and play a game like that.
You can.
Well, you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be looking down at something.
Just hold it up then.
But then, yeah,
but
it's not ideal.
But that argument is the same against the 3DS and Breaking Default, for example. For you,
exactly.
It's like,
For me, that's not ever why I've used mobile devices.
You played quite a lot of PSP like in bed at one point.
Yeah, at one point I did that. I don't anymore because now I basically just wake up and get up.
You don't sleep. You don't stay in bed for enough.
No.
Wake up, get up.
I don't really have much choice most of the time.
If you got the feeling,
on weekends a bit because that's the one time I can. But Pipe will make you feel all right.
I think you just combined like 3 different songs there.
Yeah. So anyway, Nintendo.
That's Nintendo and Sonic.
Yeah, pretty much.
Iwata saying weird shit. The news.
Pibble news.
Yeah.
Pibble news.
So, yeah, as Dan correctly said before we started recording,
which we may have said before on the podcast, but we can't remember.
We can't remember. No, Black Knight 2000 is coming to Pinball Arcade, which is awesome. Finally,
with the classic musics.
Yeah. And they've also, and this is probably even better news, really, that they're actually doing a revamp of the actual main menu system, so it will be less crap.
Awesome.
Because it is friggin' terrible. So yeah, they're actually someone has listened.
Sweet,
maybe. So that will happen. Also, in other pinball news, the Spider-Man table in Pinball FX 2 is okay.
Hurrah!
Okay,
it's although it's a bit easy, if you ask me. Like, it took me like a good couple of hours to get the hard achievement on that table, but yeah, you can go for hours. Like, you know, if you really wanted to, I could probably keep that game going for a very, very long time. But there just came a point where it's like, nope, I'm bored now. Like, let's just play dumb. See if I can forcibly send the balls down the out lanes. Bubbles.
So that's pinball news.
It's becoming a bit of a trend with Pinball FX, actually, that the Marvel tables are just a little bit easy.
Mm. How many are
there? Like 8, I think.
Freaking heck.
Because they released 2 separate packs of them.
Mm.
One for like just the Marvel pack, and one was part of the Avengers or something.
Right. Is there going to be an Age of Ultron? Oh God, when does that come out? Probably this summer, right? I guess. Is that right?
I don't know if it's this year or next year.
Avengers 2? Maybe.
We've still got that dumb Marvel Universe film with the sort of lesser known heroes, like Rocket Raccoon.
Oh right.
Still to come.
And Ant-Man, of course. I don't think that's until next year though. But they announced that Paul Rudd is playing Ant-Man, which is hilarious.
That's cool.
And it's directed by what's his face of Scott Pilgrim fame. Edgar Wright. Yeah, Edgar Wright's doing Ant-Man. So that could be hilarious.
That could be awesome.
And what's going on with the freaking DC stuff? Haven't they got? They cast Jesse Superman Eisenberg, right, to do
as Lex Luthor.
To play Lex Luthor. Everyone's saying that's dumb and it should have been Bryan Cranston, but I think he'll be pretty good. I don't think he's that.
I think he'll be good at it. It's just that he's one of those. He doesn't fulfill the visual stereotype of Lex Luthor.
No, but that's okay.
But I think they could make the character work.
Yeah, I think
he's got the right mannerism to do that.
Yeah. So, because I didn't see Man of Steel or whatever, I couldn't be bothered with. Because I heard that there's like half an hour worth of smashing buildings apart, and I was like, oh, my head's.
Yeah, the end sequence is way too long.
Yeah, I don't think.
And then you start to think that, and then there's another sequence in the same place.
Jeez, enough.
Immediately afterwards.
So, video game news. What else have we got?
That was the film minute.
That was the film minute. I saw Hawken is coming to Steam, which might make it actually played by some people. I never actually tried that, but stompy robot shooter that looks awesome and is indie. I mean, what's not to like about that shit?
Yeah, that's one. But I don't know. I guess it's free to play, I suppose, and that always may be worrying. I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. Whenever I see a free-to-play game, you always have to, I don't know, question it slightly. Like, is this a good free-to-play or is it bad free-to-play?
Exactly. But I thought that might be interesting.
Because there's a lot of bad free-to-play.
But yeah.
Because Loadout came out that I still want to try.
Oh, yeah?
I haven't got around to it yet, but that looks like it could be a fun sort of team deathmatchy type shooter.
Cool.
I saw a newspaper, a comment on a news post that made me extremely disappointed. Where it was like it was on a news post about Planetary Annihilation.
Oh yeah,
and there was a comment that was like bitching about it basically. It was like, oh, they still haven't done whatever in Planetary Annihilation, and hasn't been any more updates for Super Monday Night Combat. And I'm like, damn it, Monday Night Combat. It made me sad because I was like, they're not even updating Super Monday Night Combat. Oh, well, I guess that died. Let's all go back to normal Monday Night Combat, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
I've been very, very tempted to like go on the Giant Bomb forums and just be like, should we just organise a time and get some people together? Come on, there must be someone out here who wants to play this.
Yeah. The Saladcast Monday Night Cornment.
The Monday Night Cornment. Whatever the fuck that means.
It's a tournament for corn.
No,
Cornment. Sounds like a cormorant or something.
Yeah, Monday Night Cormorant. That's the mode they didn't think of. Replace Chicky Canter with a cormorant.
It's like, technically we could just go and play the Blitz mode, but that's not what you want. You want Crossfire.
Yeah, it's all about the main like MOBA light game.
Yeah.
That's why I like Awesome Noughts. Which we still need to organise to play.
There's no Monday Night Combat.
No, it is no Monday Night Combat. Even I will admit it's not Monday Night Combat, but it's...
So yeah, that was my disappointing news.
Yeah.
I guess Planetary Annihilation is like nearly normal game price now.
I did go,
as it's gradually been dropping down towards being complete.
I did go have a quick look to see if anything was happening at Time Splitters Rewind.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it's like, the project's still alive. I gleaned that much. But they haven't really released any major info for a while.
I think Ben was talking about, I'll have to ask him, the guy that we know from Southampton who works for whoever they are, Crytek UK, ex-Free Radical. I think he mentioned it. I can't remember what he said about it, but I think it obviously, although he was saying he doesn't want to do that in his free time because he spends all day working on CryEngine, so he doesn't want to do that.
Exactly. That's what it did here. Now maybe this is what got me looking at it, because apparently they've said that they're going to do a PS4 version of it.
Oh, right, okay. Well,
that may, I can't remember how long, whether I saw that as part of me randomly looking it up or if that was what prompted me to go look it up. I can't remember. So they may have said that a while ago. But we haven't reported it until now. So it's still good.
There you go. Zeg, I was wondering if you had any comment on the giant Eve Battle of Doom, the biggest one ever.
I didn't know about it until I saw the news post, so that's my standard procedure with Eve. I don't actually know about anything that happens, but I don't know. It seemed pretty big.
Our professional Eve correspondent's view on the biggest thing that ever happened in Eve is it seemed pretty big. There we go.
Top class analysis.
Well, I did look at a couple of screenshots that were in a news post, because the thing, I read like a big news, like an actual news report that someone had written up about it.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to me is basically looking at the screenshots and seeing if it matches what they're actually describing.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay.
So I looked at a couple of them, and it's like the picture was captioned like, every one of these red and orange dots is either a ship or a drone, and I'm like, you mean all of them are drones? Because there's not actually that many ships. Because when you turn on icons for drones, it's like every ship can launch 5 drones. So take how many dots there are on the screen, divide that by 5, and then you're getting closer to how many ships there are in that screenshot.
Right. That was the official post, wasn't it? The CCP post, or whatever that had.
Maybe that was the one that they sent out for the official news.
Yeah, they had like a press release type one, which was like trying to explain it in more layman's terms. But
yeah, but then I saw another screenshot that didn't have any of in-space icons on where it was just showing the ships, and that did look pretty ridiculous. It's just where you can see like fucking 4 Titans just like clumped together, and it's like, that's quite a lot. And then there's like way more as well. And I was trying to like work out what the fuck some of the ships even were, because when they've got their armor repairers on, they have a weird glowing effect. And I was like, what ship is that? But I think those are Titans as well. So it's like quite a lot of Titans.
Well, apparently there were 75 of them, right? 75 Titans destroyed.
Yeah.
So that's like the previous record is
75 Titans.
Yeah. So the previous record was 12. So 75. So apparently, if you work out the ISK into US dollars in terms of what's lost, it was $300,000.
Yeah.
Except when you want to put it a different way, no money was lost.
Well, depends how you look at it.
Probably not, though, because they probably brought that ISK with money, I bet, for most of those Titans.
Converted it in. I guess the build process for 75 otherwise would be pretty long.
Well, I mean, long
each of them is months, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I expect
75, that's amazing.
I mean, apparently what happened was that normally in these battles, it's pretty obvious quite quickly who's going to win. And this time, they both thought they could win for ages.
It was more like one guy went all in because he thought the other team wouldn't get enough there in time.
Yeah.
But then they did.
Yeah.
So it just turned into an almost straight fight, which is fairly rare.
So this was this an organised fight?
No, well,
what do you mean an organised fight?
Well, as in, there wasn't any drama regarding like who jumped in where at the wrong time.
There was drama.
Like
it happened because
they the bill for a sovereignty.
Yeah.
Someone's station went into, failed to get refueled or whatever. Basically.
Right.
So it was a mistake.
In a simple way. Yeah, someone didn't pay a bill, and then that system became open to invasion, pretty much. And then
they did.
So
that's fine. I thought it was just like, we're bored, let's have a fight.
Well, there was the suggestion that the reason why that bill didn't get paid might have been because of a bug. Like the person who was meant to pay the bill thought it had been paid, and it appeared to be paid to them.
And 2 independent verifiers also so he was supposed to have 2 dudes to check as well that he'd paid the bill, and they both said, yeah, it's been paid, and then it wasn't.
Oh, weird.
So it might have been a glitch.
I think someone suggested that like maybe if it turns out it was a glitch, they'll refund all that stuff, which would be funny. If they have to try and pull the refunds off of that.
Nah.
What real impetus does CCP have to do that though? Because it just means it's like, holy shit, people are going to like put 75 Titans worth of cash back in if that's how they're doing it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do anything. I mean, what they have done is put a special like monument in where the battle happened. They've like put a bunch of pretty wrecks of ships and stuff to say, oh, this is where the battle happened.
Yes, so it's like all wrecks are incredibly not pretty.
No. Yeah,
and also get salvaged, of course.
So they're specially crafted, fucked up Titans. Oh, and that might be the other thing they might do. Apparently, is gradually put salvage there so that you can kind of recoup some of the.
Well, because it's like you can salvage wrecks normally, but it's just like a one-time thing. So I guess what they're going to make it like an actual like an asteroid belt, basically. I guess.
Yeah, with stuff you can mine out of the Titans. That's kind of cool.
Potentially.
That's the whole sort of like playing to what happens in the EVE universe thing.
Yeah,
like making it lore as the players do it. That's really that's kind of one of the coolest things about EVE. Like apart from the crazy economics and stuff like that.
It's cool to hear that it's still going super strong. I mean, it's like, didn't it launch before World of Warcraft? It's like 10 years old or something, right? How old is it?
I don't know if it released before.
Because you were
pretty
playing
much the same.
Yeah, it was more or less the same time.
More or less the same time. Yeah. It was like 2002, I think, when it came out.
No, it was 2003.
Okay.
So 11 years. Okay.
Not quite 11 years.
Okay.
Because my character is not quite 11 years old.
Right. Oh, jeez.
August. Or September. I think it's August is when my character gets to be 11.
But it has evolved quite a lot since its initial launch.
Well, yeah.
Are you playing EVE at the moment, or are you lapsed in your...
I played slightly, like, over this last 2 weeks, what I've been playing.
Ooh.
with spoilers.
EVE may have been first. WoW is 2004.
Yeah, I thought so. Because you guys were playing it literally at school. Like, you were playing it in the sixth form on your laptop.
You were. I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't. Barlow was.
Well, you were
Barlow
in the vicinity while he was playing.
Yeah, Barlow would hijack my laptop while I pleaded to play NHL. It's like, let's play NHL, goddammit. And he was like, no, I need to fly my ships.
Yep.
I saw him the other day.
That was also the point when I discovered that Eve wasn't the game I was expecting.
Well, like immediately.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. He's playing Rome 2 at the moment, I saw.
So he's got
not Dota.
Yeah, he's broken out.
He mostly plays Dota. I don't know. I expect he's still playing Dota, but I think he was looking for something slightly more relaxing to play while he was watching TV.
Wow, really? You can play Total War while watching TV? I'm not.
Well,
have you seen a strategy game?
I know. Have you seen the way that John plays games though? He does a million things at once and doesn't really pay attention either. It's quite strange the way.
You can't do that for Dota though. For fairly sure.
No, not for Dota, probably.
And not win.
Well, yeah, you could. It just wouldn't be any use.
So that battle didn't affect you at all, then, Zeg, I guess, in any way.
I don't know. It might theoretically affect something like resource prices or whatever.
Yeah,
it might trickle down to my part of the universe.
Yeah, Eve.
I doubt it.
Eve almost beats WoW by like a year and a half. Like about that.
I think Eve is probably healthier than WoW in terms of long-term outlook, although it's never going to be numbers-wise the same. But
yeah, I predict. Yeah, you're right. It seems like WoW will die eventually, whereas Eve, I don't think, is showing any real signs that it needs to. No. People are into Eve are well into it, and probably always will be while it's still about.
Yep. Oh, but one of the dudes from the Council of Stellar Management was quite important in the battle, I think. I was reading. So,
you mean that the same guy who's important in Eve in every case, the Mitani guy?
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Is he just important in everything?
He wasn't on the Council of Stellar Management at that point. He got kicked off. He was the one who made the horrible remarks about why don't you make that guy commit suicide, and then he got kicked off the Council of Stellar Management.
That's right, the arsehole guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's from Goosewall. I mean, what do you expect?
Right, okay. Fair enough. But are they even called that anymore? Are they split into factions, or are they Because they
kind of inherently had to split into factions because of the size limits of Eve corporations.
I see. So.
Oh, I didn't realise that happened.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember what they're actually.
Because I don't think the Test Alliance weren't involved in this one. The Reddit lot.
No.
It was like that. There was a small fraction in this one that were literally just called the Russians.
Well, no, they weren't literally called the Russians. They're just Russians, so everyone calls them the Russians.
Oh, right. I thought they were literally called the Russians.
That would be great.
But they were the only ones
I think it's just a bunch of for some reason, I don't know why it turned out like this, but when they opened up, there was a new area of space that got opened up like a year or two ago, maybe. The drone regions where it's got the pirate faction in there is basically rogue drones instead of one of the normal pirate factions, and then apparently as soon as that area got opened up, the Russians just took it. The Russians. So that whole area, if you look on sovereignty maps, it's just a bunch of weird Russian named corporations that own that whole bit of space for some reason. Don't know quite how that happened.
So actually, there could have been many corporations involved in this fight that were just Russian names.
Well, it's the Russians. Presumably, it's just one of the Russian alliances. But it's just the Russians.
So we better move on to what you've been playing.
I guess.
I think you should go, Zeg, because you've got a whole RPG to go, plus others. So let's get going.
Well, I did play some Eve, because I hadn't for a while. And I guess I haven't really actually played it for a really long time, because when I went back in, I was almost suddenly surprised by how ridiculous the gunfire looks nowadays.
It's awesome.
I guess the previous times that I would have been playing it when that those effects had been updated, I would have been using my regular long range ships. So I don't normally see that much fire. I'm miles away, and my bullets are just going off into the distance. Whereas in this other ship I was flying recently, I was doing blaster range, so point blank. So it's just like, the screen is full of lasers, and also I don't normally fight enemies that actually use lasers as well, which makes it much more insane. It's a bit of an epilepsy warning in some cases, particularly with pulse lasers, because they flash.
As they should, really.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's a bit crazy. But yeah, it was like, I wanted to go back in and continue getting some loyalty points for this new corporation that I wanted these new ships from that were introduced in the last batch. So I was looking to see if I could move, like, I wanted to do level 4 missions because that's like a quicker way to. I was grinding out shitty level 3s because that's easy. But I was like, well, if I can do level 4s, which I already have like several ships set up to do level 4s at my other places that I do level 4s. So I was like, I could just bring my Navy Megaphone over here and do them, and that'd be fine. But then I thought maybe I'll get a new ship or repurpose one of my other ships. And then I realised that one of the ships that I haven't flown in for like a really long time, because it used to be not very good, when it got rebalanced in one of the various ship rebalancing patches that they've been going through, it suddenly became awesome. And I was like, sweet, it's a tiny cruiser-sized ship, but it can tank and shoot almost as well as a battleship, so I'll use that.
Nice.
So I did, and that seems to work pretty good. Although it's fairly hilarious when you're fighting like enemy battleships and you're a tiny cruiser.
You're like the Millennium Falcon, just like dodging bullets.
Pretty much. So yeah, I did some of that. That looks kind of crazy.
Love how they keep upgrading it. I mean, they have to, but I mean, it's probably a lot easier to upgrade EVE graphics than WoW graphics, for example.
Yeah.
But even so, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they don't really have a world to worry about, do they? They can update in very discrete chunks, can't they?
Yeah, you can just up the poly count,
can't you? Ship. Yeah.
Well, arguably.
Well, when they did the gun loadout and stuff, then they...
Yeah, but it's not like they did some of the guns, they just did them all.
No, true.
They like do one ship at a time, they just did them all. Apart from in a few very specific cases.
But even so, that's... I mean, I'm not saying that wasn't a lot of work, but there's still one part of the EVE universe that they just decided to do.
Yeah.
Like, and then other times they do the reskins of the ships, don't they? And then other times they do the...
Yeah, like the planets and stuff.
Like the space, the space. Well, what was it? The skyboxing. I guess the accurate skyboxing.
So they've done it in parts, but I mean, I guess they're sort of done with that now. I don't think there's any graphical patches due for quite a while.
Presumably they'll be working on the station stuff.
Well, yeah, there is that at some point, maybe.
As it says here, the ambulation engine.
Yep, the ambulation. You got to ambulate.
That's a genius name.
I didn't know that was what it was called. That's great.
So you'll be at ambulation stations in your station?
Yep. Apart from probably not, because I don't care about that shit.
Of course not.
I don't think anyone does.
Does anyone? No.
It's like, I wonder whether that's ever actually going to happen at this point.
But surely that adds an element of role-playing into the game. That's
but I don't think anyone who's playing it cares.
Well, they just play it for the systems, not for the, like, I'm this dude in this world.
Yeah, it's like no one cared about the people flying the ships.
It's the Russians.
Yep. But I think the only thing that I can think of that's probably, like, a major thing that was theorized that might come apart from the walking in stations was stuff like they were going to redo the asteroid belt so they were actually more like asteroid belts. As in, like, just a one big ring that encircles the sun.
Didn't they promise that a long time ago?
Yeah, but then they said it more, like, more committedly.
Committedly.
They said it more committedly.
With more conviction.
Well, not sure about that. But yeah, they suggested that might, and like comets and stuff, like different ways to mine. Because asteroid belts have always been done in EVE, because they are
just like blocks of. Well, they're like mini rings.
Yeah, it's like a tiny arch of asteroids that just happen to be near a planet. But really, that is the big problem with that whole idea of like planet-wide, system-wide asteroid belts. Is like, how do you balance it? Because presumably they wouldn't just... Because if they made an asteroid belt that did encompass the entire system, that would be so many goddamn asteroids that would just completely unbalance, like, the resource intake, presumably. Because I'm not sure... I guess that's something their economist has to work out, but it's like, how much difference would it be from clearing one of the asteroid belts and then moving on to another one, and then clearing a whole system and then moving on to another system? It's like,
How much can you? Will the economy be messed up by the fact that you can just keep?
Yeah, that you can just like stay in one system for a whole day. I mean, presumably that's just they just have to take into account that time gap of having to move between systems and belts, and just like proportionally reduce the amount of resources you get or something. Presumably, it wouldn't be that difficult to balance if they wanted to. Although that does sort of give you other problems in like low sec space, where it's like if you can just stay in one system and mine it without having to travel, then that gives like more defensive.
Maybe that's the thing. Yeah, maybe the density is like less.
Yeah,
the density of good materials.
Yeah, but it's like you'd still maybe want people traveling is the idea, because if you can just stay in one system the whole time and still get the equivalent resources as if you were traveling from system to system, maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. Fuck it. That's something for them to work out.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So yeah, that's Eve. I'm still grinding away to get that ship. I'm going to get it. I've decided I am only going to get that new cruiser rather than the new battleship, because the new battleship doesn't look as cool and isn't as useful to me.
No, it doesn't look as cool.
As your cruiser or your old?
Well, as this new cruiser.
Right, like one of the most. This is dumb.
Yeah, this is dumb.
But the kind of. Have you seen the news post they did about this, Dan? Because this will interest you as well. But where they.
Really?
The stuff they've put online about what the new ships are and stuff like that, they're basically using WebGL to provide a 3D model of the ships.
Okay.
But it looks really good, like almost as good as the game good.
Well, yeah, WebGL's pretty good.
But it's just the speed at which it loads, and it's...
Right.
Yeah,
That's cool.
but it's the speed at which it loads. It's like, at least on my connection anyway.
On your connection, everything loads fast.
Yeah, but it was pretty seamless, and I was just that's kind of impressive, because it's animated, and they had the engines going, and the bits of shit glowing in just the right way. And
what do you need is the textures,
presumably
right?
It's the same assets, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, how big do you think that is, like the textures for a ship? Like a couple of megabytes or something on your...
probably, yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I get what you mean.
Even so, I was just like, I have not seen that before.
That's cool. Pretty cool. I mean, I'd have to have a fallback because it won't work on IE10, let alone i9 or 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
So
we were running it in Chrome, but
yeah, well, exactly. But like that's probably the main reason why people don't use WebGL more often, is because there's probably a ton of people on IE10. And it's only the cutting edge, the latest IE that actually supports WebGL. But it's super cool.
And the effort needed to actually make 3D stuff.
Well, if you're already a game,
just making a website. But,
well, that's true. But if you're already a game developer, it's basically a very similar API to OpenGL. So obviously not as many features, but you can do some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, it's pretty awesome, and I look forward to more of that stuff on the web, although it's going to be weird for me because like I might have to learn some graphics programming to stay cutting edge with the web, which is already bad enough with Canvas, let alone frickin', which is like 2D mostly. Although that's how WebGL works, is you use a canvas element and then you just use a 3D context on it rather than a 2D context. But yeah.
I know nothing. It's been so long since I've dealt with 3D graphics.
So speaking of theoretical programming stuff, I guess
Starbound.
Yeah,
Starbound.
I didn't really play that again, and I also didn't really do very much on my mod work because, well, the trouble was I kept thinking about doing it, and then I'd start doing something else, and then I was like, yeah, well, let's get on to doing that Starbound thing, and then by the time I tried to start doing it, it would be like midnight, and I've forced myself not to continue doing anything after midnight so it doesn't fuck up my sleep. It's like, I need to stop thinking about programming at midnight so I can have like a few hours of not thinking about it.
No, that's a very good idea. Going to sleep buzzing with ideas is bad.
So really I haven't done very much of my Starbound mods. I did a little bit, except I spent most of the week trying to... someone posted in like the discussion post of my main mod, he posted an error, which is like an easy enough error to read. Like I can see what line it's pointing to and everything. Except on my computer, it works perfectly fine.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh no, not one of these bugs.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you need repro steps.
I basically tried to spend the whole week trying to work out what could possibly be doing it, and I still couldn't.
Oh man, those are the worst. Those, because sometimes you just end up with. I've literally at work been dealing with problems which are only appear on a client's live database or a live system, and I'm running a copy of that database, that client's database, I use their setup as my test environment because it's got a bit of everything.
And you still can't reproduce it.
I couldn't replicate it, and it's been a nightmare.
So I more or less gave up on that guy's bug after like 4 days, and then on the 5th day I was like, let's try and actually make something new. But then I still haven't finished that because I was trying to do, because of my main mod with the real power cables and everything. One of the things you have is solar panels, which is the only way you get power at the moment.
Yep.
So that was my first thing. But then I was trying to. The way they work at the moment, the solar panels don't work if you're not looking at them effectively. It's like as soon as they get unloaded, as soon as you walk away from them, because obviously the object doesn't exist, so it doesn't run any scripts, so it doesn't create any power.
Yeah.
So I was trying to work out the maths to make it, use the system clock basically to
figure out how much you need when they get loaded back in.
Which is it's because there's another mod that does essentially the same thing, but for crops. Because it used to, in normal Starbound, crops don't grow unless you're on the same planet. I'm not sure if they also grow when they're unloaded, but they don't grow properly, basically. So there's a mod that fixes that, which makes them grow at any time. And that one actually goes further than using the internal clock of the game. It uses the actual system clock. So it works out time while you're not even playing the game.
Oh, cool!
Makes them grow for the right amount. So I wasn't going to go quite that far, but it's relatively.
Well, that might even be easier to go that far. I mean, if they just have a call that is what's the Unix timestamp, and then they just take them away from each other and then multiply.
I mean, I could do that as well, but then the trouble with I kind of made myself this problem because that in theory is okay to do. It's I know I can understand the idea of how that works. But then I added another layer of problem on top of that by making it solar panels that only work during daytime, and planets can have different day lengths.
Oh no!
And
programming
I was
time.
Maths.
It's time for some programming. That's my favorite thing. Whenever I have a problem with this with programming, you need a bit of maths, but it's never even close to the kind of maths I did at A level.
No,
it's always GCSE level shit where I'm how do you divide by what? It's always super simple, but the operations are simple, but the actual concept is more complicated to get your head around. But that's more accurate. Yeah, but the individual things you need to do.
One of our favorite bugs that we had a while back was any kind of date based mathematics that you're having to do, especially when the maths you're working on is against the week number of the year, which is a really annoying thing to work against.
52. Everyone's favourite.
Well, no, because at the end of a year, you then have a real problem to figure out actually what is the weekend and week start, and by what rules do you judge that?
Right. Yeah.
And it's that the maths to figure that out can be a real bugger. We had a bug at one point that basically got that calculation wrong very slightly. So you could have a day or two where it would just miscalculate where the start of the week was. And so it would think that those days didn't fall into any week. And so it would consider those days sort of non-existent in a way. It's that math is actually pretty hard.
It's
anything to do with dates is a nightmare, or anything.
It's all simple math in terms of operationally. I mean, Dan's right. It's not like I'm signing or co-signing or logging every logarithms all out coming out my ass. It's just I have to divide this by this, but if I do that, then that's not going to quite work, and then I need a mod there. And
it was slightly inconvenient. It would be more convenient if there was actually just a call in Starbound to tell you how long the day was in game time, but there isn't. So you have to calculate it. You have to basically have a function that just runs once and says, okay, the world time is now this, and then a couple of seconds later it runs again and says, okay, now the world time is this, and the amount of day this has passed, because you can get
ratio
a proportional amount of day.
Yeah,
where it's 0 at the start of the day and 1 at the end of the day. So it's you have to work out how much of the day has passed between those two checks and then calculate how long the day is. It's just well, that's unnecessarily complicated.
Do you?
Yes.
Could you? Because the actual day period within the light period
Because the length of the day depends on the planet.
Sure, but if you're only dealing between 0 and 1, surely the day cycle just falls between a min and max bound.
No, but you need to calculate how long the day is in time units, so that when you say how long the solar panel has existed, it can convert that into how many days it's existed.
Oh, okay, weird.
Just slightly inconvenient.
That's just they're missing an API call there, because obviously somewhere internally it knows how long the day is.
Oh yeah, because Ben was just saying if this is for the electric system, it's like surely you only needed to say is power or isn't power.
But unfortunately, I gave myself a whole problem by using solar panels, where they have to be on for half of the day. And then you have to work out which half of the day that is.
You should have a crazy bell curve thing.
Or
you need a crazy ass
charge.
Yeah.
I mean, do you mean? Sorry, I'm confused by why this is a problem. It has to build up it has to be on for half a day to store power. To deliver later.
They're only on during the daylight hours.
But then surely that's just between 2 bounds of this 0 and 1, say from 0.25 to 0.75.
Yeah, but then you still have to multiply that by the day length that you've calculated by doing this other calculation.
Why? Because if it's between 2.5 and 7.5, isn't that all you need?
Well, it depends when the solar panels load and deload.
Oh, right. There's more to it on that sense.
You still have to, if the solar panel unloads at night, and then you come back and it's 0.3 of the day during the day, you still have to discount the night part from the time that you're adding on.
Okay. It sounds like API failings. Yeah. This is one of those things that seems conceptually simple.
Yep. I know how I'm going to do it. It's just a matter of finishing off this bit of maths that I have to do. And then, it's slightly annoying, but basically the way it works at the moment is the battery says to the solar panel, every game tick, the battery says to the solar panel, how much power do you have? And then the solar panel says, I've got this much power, and then gives it. So I'm going to have to make basically a special call that when they come out of a deloaded state, they're going to have to make a special call that says, how much extra power do you theoretically have?
Right, yeah.
And then just get that in one big lump, basically.
Fudge the electricity for how much time you weren't on screen.
Yeah. So that's slightly annoying. But yeah, it should theoretically work. I just haven't got around to it, and then I keep not getting to it before midnight, and then saying no.
Is that how the game simulates how much time has passed when you're not there, then, in general? Or?
I don't think it does. Like I said, with the farming crop items, those normally in the base game, those don't grow
unless you're nearby, right?
I think they might grow if you're on the same planet, which is weird because they don't grow if you're not on the same planet, and you'd think that would solve that same problem because they're unloaded and it's just a generic unload state.
All right, maybe it's just not exposed.
Yeah, or maybe they work on. Well, I guess world time is the world time.
I guess they don't need day and night to work.
Yeah, they also don't need day and night. Yeah.
So can you use a combination of the two then?
That's what that mod does.
Right.
The mod that fixes the farm rules. So yeah, it's slightly dumb, but it's sort of. I already had to deal with the unloading problem for the cable system because I basically solved that by just making it do a full reset of the system when it reloads. So when it comes out of an unloaded state, it's I don't know, just delete all the information you had inside, apart from the bit where you say how much power you had. Just save that one variable because then it rechecks all the connections, which is probably the only real way of doing that.
Yeah, seems sensible.
But that's the annoying thing. It's if you're doing any kind of complex mod work, probably in any game, the whole idea of unloading and reloading, particularly if it's Minecraft or Terraria or this, where it's a block-based system, where it's parts of it can theoretically be unloaded.
Yeah, how does that work in something like Buildcraft, where they're
yeah, well,
bits of pipeline missing?
For a long time in the Minecraft mods, they made a special block that forced the block of world to stay loaded, regardless of how far away you went.
Okay, so while you had all that stuff built, that area would always be running.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it would slow down your game if
that has its own problems.
Yeah,
having to force it to stay loaded. I think they did fix that for Buildcraft eventually. But yeah. And I had another weird problem along the similar lines with the solar panels, where they were when the solar panels do a check to see if there's any blocks obscuring their light, I guess, which is just it checks 100 blocks above it to see if anything's there, which is a very cheap way of doing it. But the problem with that was that when the solar panels were right on the edge of the screen, for some reason that makes it fail. It's like those that when they're right on the very, very edge of your visible screen area, that it doesn't properly check whether the blocks are obscured or not, so they go off.
Is it just on the right, or does it matter?
No, it's on like the top.
On the top
because it's checking above the solar panels. So I was like, well, that's
has it unloaded those 100 blocks above?
Well, I don't think it could have because they're too close. So I was like trying to work out what's wrong with it, and then I figured like, well, actually, probably it's just unloading. It's going to be a problem when it unloads as well. If you just extrapolate that theory, it's like at some point those blocks won't exist.
Yeah.
So then I just made it so that like the solar panels only check if there's clear space above them when you can physically see them. It's like if this solar panel is loaded and you can see it on the screen, then do a check.
So then you can have solar panels that are in caves, and they work provided you run away.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that's sort of a problem that the game has anyway. Like, sometimes when you're in a cave, if it's raining on the surface of the planet and you're in a cave, but you jump upwards, so that the top ceiling of a cave is off screen for a moment and then comes back into screen, some rain appears.
Oh, right.
Because it's fixed, there's nothing above there. So, yeah. Fighting against game systems, that's always fun.
Seems like their unload-load strategy is a bit heavy-handed.
Maybe. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, this kind of world-building game, you have to be pretty hardcore about it just for the, like, particularly if it's a multiplayer server.
Surely I guess that depends on when, in this case, surely there's, like, it's just defining what the boundary is, like, how far away do you go before the unload happens? Yeah. And it sounds like maybe it's a bit close.
Maybe. But, it sucks when... It's the weird thing in, like, Starbound when areas haven't loaded, like when we were getting server lag. They're actually quite small chunks. Like, the area that a chunk that loads at once will fit entirely on your screen. So presumably it's loading, like, a bunch of them.
Or maybe it's more of a question of just having more... Like, they need to figure out what shortcuts they need to this stuff. Like, I don't know, like, say, there's a ceiling above me, like flag or something, so therefore you don't ever need to spawn.
Well, that's quite a difficult
top.
flag, really, because it has to check an infinite distance, I suppose.
True, but you can sort of, if it's seen it in the relative, like...
Yeah, maybe.
If it's seen all above it at some point, then it can set it, maybe.
Although I think it's actually still, like, fudging that anyway, because there's... I'm not sure whether they still exist, but at one point there was like, in a planet, there was asteroid belts that were like super low altitude. Like they still existed in the world, and if you just built a really tall ladder, you could get to them. But instead of actual asteroid belts, which they have now, which are like a separate biome, like you land on them. So I think those sometimes screw up like my solar panels. That's why I had to limit it to like 100 blocks, because if you set it to like 5,000 or something, the solar panels never work because there's something up there.
Right.
And it just counts that as solid, but whereas that doesn't affect the rain, so I presume the rain is like fudging it by like having a lower ceiling.
If they had some way of determining whether or not the background of that tile...
What was like, is it
cave or is it sky
or something?
Well, no, like, surely it's just if there's something directly behind it is sky.
Well, not always, though. Because the backgrounds aren't always solid underground. You can like mine through the background.
No, but then it wouldn't be sky behind it. It wouldn't be like blue or...
Well, that's what I meant by the XY, because that's basically what that is. It's like once you go below a certain X point, they
must already have some identifier for what graphic to display.
Yeah.
If you could have access to that, then that solves your problem, surely.
Sort of, except for those asteroids that count as being in the sky part of the level.
Yeah, but if you just had sky directly behind the rough vicinity of your panel.
Yeah, but that's not enough. You need like some distance above. Otherwise, you can just have the solar panel in like a big room.
Yeah, you're simulating the third dimension.
Yeah, I guess. So yeah, fucking Starbound.
So Starbound.
Talked about that enough.
Yeah.
Considering how little work I did on that this week.
Well, it is interesting because it's picking apart game systems, which is kind of interesting.
So, talking about picking apart game systems, because there's a fucking lot of systems in Bravely Default.
Hey.
Which turned up off from Amazon after my mysterious Amazon problems.
It begins.
I have problems with Amazons.
Yep. So, yeah, I played a significant amount of that.
It's time to break out the Shambles beer.
So what's the dealio? It's a JRPG, and it's from Square Enix, but it's not Final Fantasy, but it's good. Is that right?
Well, so like one of the things that I'd been seeing a lot that I was interested in was all the people were like, "Oh, it's the best Final Fantasy game ever." And then, as I said before, it's like I was trying to determine how ironic that was. Where it's like, do they mean that Final Fantasy is shit and this is a better game than Final Fantasy, or are they actually sort of being sincere?
I think it's more the latter.
Okay.
It does bear reasonable similarity to some of.
Well, it's basically a sort of cross between Final Fantasy and Golden Sun, particularly in the story. I mean, it's basically Golden Sun's story, which I assume must just be like, it must be based off some generic Japanese folklore or something, considering that it's a really that it is like literally pretty much exactly the same as Golden Sun. That makes me think it must be taken from something. Because it's basically the same story as Golden Sun. The world is falling apart because the 4 elemental crystals aren't glowing any longer. So we have to go around the world to the different element towers and light the crystals. That's basically the story of Golden Sun and this game.
Okay.
So yeah, you do that. You trundle around the world.
You trundle
up crystal towers.
Do you have a caravan?
Well, you do get an airship almost immediately, which is quite ridiculous. It's just like, Final Fantasy game, have an airship. But you have this one from practically the start of the game.
Awesome.
But that's your main way. I think you showed me that in the demo, though, isn't it? That's your main way of traversing.
It wasn't in the demo.
Oh, wasn't it? Oh. What was I saying? You were showing me something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, anyway.
But yeah, you get the airship like almost immediately, except then it breaks, sort of. Well, it's weird because you get the airship almost immediately, but it can only land in water because it's a literal ship that also turns into an airship.
I see.
So it
has no wheels.
Yeah, it doesn't have landing gear or whatever. You can only land it in water. But at the start of the game, because of the water temple being fucked up, all the water in the world is fucked apart from like inland lakes. So like the seas are all fucked, so you can't land in the seas. So that's how they gate you initially. It's like you can only land where the water's okay. And then once you fix the water temple, someone jumps on your airship and destroys the power core so it can only work as a boat. It's like, now you can't fly over land any longer. So they gate you there as well.
Now you're in the sea and nowhere else.
Yeah, but you fix the sea at that point, so you can at least land on the ports.
That's that's kind of fine, because in a way is somewhat more explainable than, like, I don't know, in Lost Odyssey, where you get the boat and they're like, oh, there's a strong current here, we can't go in it.
Oh, good old strong current.
Yeah, and it's just a slightly darker patch of sea, or in some cases, like a wall of storm, like a literal wall.
Well, it's like Skies of Arcadia.
Yeah.
Where they had, like, the mysterious wind walls where once your ship upgrades, you can fly through them.
Because, yeah, Skies of Arcadia kind of gets away with it because all of that world is mental.
Well, yeah.
But
and the way ships work in that world is, like, weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically the story. It's like, it's basically Golden Sun. And, you know, even the fight system bears some sort of visual similarity to Golden Sun more than Final Fantasy, probably.
Yeah.
Or, well, maybe the older Final Fantasies.
Yeah, it is quite visual, you know, just in terms of layout, I suppose.
Yeah, like two lines of
enemies, yeah, and a rotating camera. And
it doesn't rotate, though, really. That's why, like, Golden Sun was cool, because it had that weird, like, the camera actually rotated, even though the sprites almost only had 2 different animations, like the front animation and the back animation.
And then they used Mode 7 to try and make it look like it was rotating.
Yeah.
It sort of worked.
Whereas in this, it's like, the camera doesn't really rotate, it just switches to different angles. Which can be, like, slightly jarring in some cases.
I like that. I think the visual style is real good.
Yeah, I mean, it looks fine. And, like, the art in the towns is pretty cool, where it's, like, weirdly sort of, like, hand-drawn looking, apart from it's also in 3D. And, like, the 3D is actually good.
Cool.
The character design
That's always a good thing on the 3DS, right?
Yes.
The character design reminds me a little bit of, like, you know, the FMV they added to Final Fantasy Tactics for the PSP version.
Well, I don't know that, but I have seen the original, which was really bad as well.
But the sort of, I don't know, almost mostly featureless faces, you know,
yeah,
the sort of with a sudden bit of eye. It's like
it's kind of weird. It's just like
plain.
For some reason they don't have noses. Apart from they sort of do. It's just like you don't. It's subtle, so you don't notice it most of the time.
Just like a dot for a nostril or something.
Sort of.
Pig nose.
But yeah, so I don't know. It's a very complicated game in terms of mechanics. Like, I mean, even just the basic battle system is pretty goddamn complicated. The whole idea of brave and default.
Right, yeah.
Like storing up turns and then using turns. And you actually have to... I think maybe the best thing about it is, like, the balance of it. I mean, I made the mistake of starting on normal and then immediately turned it to hard, because normal is well easy. But then again, hard is like... Hard will sort of maybe sometimes require you to, A, occasionally grind, because there do seem to be occasional bits where it's like it's not a very smooth difficulty curve. It's like you'll come to a new area and you'll be like, holy fuck, everything here is well hard. So you would have to do a little bit of grinding. And the other thing that occasionally happens in hard is like, well, I guess this is more a good thing than the other one, but in hard you'll find like you can't just brute force it as much for bosses. It's like you actually have to maybe respec your team specifically for a boss.
Yeah, I've seen there are a lot of the reviews have said that that you can be cruising for, even in normal mode. Apparently, this is true, that you can be cruising for a while and then you'll come across a boss fight that pretty much demands a certain technique.
I mean, I guess really the first. Well, I guess I say it's not really the first boss. It's not even really a very early boss, relatively speaking, but it's the first major boss because it's the first of the temple.
First tower, right?
The first temple boss is like... I had such trouble with that because it's basically this two-headed dog thing, and it has like a fire head and an ice head.
Okay.
And together they do like an even more ridiculous ice fire attack or whatever. And like that thing just destroys you because it's a two-headed thing. It gets 2 turns per turn. And inevitably, and all of its attacks hit your whole team. So that thing just murdered me like for ages. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to... So in the end, you just have to basically make your entire team mage classes. So you have super high magic resistance.
Right.
And then also I had to grind for a little bit before that to level up the black. When you level up Black Mage, you get one of the support abilities, which is like passives. One of the support abilities you get on Black Mage is like resist fire.
Oh, that's handy.
So if you have that on everyone...
So then you take the ice damage.
Well, or you take some of the fire damage, but not as much. So it's like you really have to basically set yourself up for that and maybe not play the classes you're usually playing. But then, of course, if you're playing a class that you've never played before, you're shit.
Does that mean you have to grind up the job before doing the boss?
Yeah. It's like you have to grind up the job level a little bit to make you slightly less shit at that job before you go into the boss.
I mean, I'm not sure that... A bit of that sort of appeals to me, because that kind of reminds me of how old Final Fantasy sort of worked.
Right.
I don't know, some of, like, FF8, I thought, admittedly you didn't
have...
Well,
it's just like you're junctioning differently in Final Fantasy, really.
Exactly, yeah, but it wasn't as hardcore as having to spec your team differently, but there were times where you'd go into it and go, I am so not ready for this.
Yeah.
And you'd have to go away and, like, either rethink the strategy or just go and grind. And some of that, back in those days, I don't know, there's something about FF8, the way that did it, and it never felt particularly bad, but you play it like a modern RPG, and you reach that point. Sometimes it's just like, well, what the fuck?
Well, a lot of the time in FF8, that happened sort of more in the open world aspect, didn't it? Because it's like, stuff that you wouldn't necessarily have to do at that point.
Yeah, FF8 did give you a lot of freedom on...
So you could walk into something that was actually, like, too difficult for you.
Yeah, and by the time you get the flying ship and you discover the level 100 island, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty decent. And then the other thing that's sort of awesome that helps you with that element of having to respec your team and whatever is like all the different options they've got for configuring the way battles happen, basically. Because it's like you can turn up or down the encounter rate, which is clearly awesome. So it's like when you're grinding, you just set it to maximum, so you get a fight like every step. So you're never not fighting. And then if you just need to run somewhere, you turn it to 0 and just have no fights.
Well, I guess this leads to the obvious question that any grind-based RPG has to have. Are the fights varied enough to keep it interesting?
Well, I mean, probably. Because like,
in order to make a grind like happy, you need at least enough enemy variants to sort of keep you guessing a little.
Well, no, because I don't think that's the idea. Because it's like when you're doing a grind, I think you want to know what the enemies are so you can just get through it quickly, which is what this lets you do.
True.
Because, I mean, don't know. You can set the encounter rate up and down. You can toggle it so you don't gain experience or money or job points, so you can turn those on and off independently. which is nice if you don't want to just totally over-level yourself. If you're doing grinding for cash, but you don't want to totally over-level your team, you can just turn off experience points.
Because we can sort of do a comparison here, in a way, because I've been playing FF13-2, and its auto-battle system has a bit of a problem in that for most of the time, you do just put it in auto and the fight wins itself.
Well,
but yeah, there are. You can mix it up. So the game, the only real impetus in Final Fantasy 13 and 13-2 is to go for the 5-star ratings in the fight, which can give you a higher drop rate for loot and stuff.
Right.
And so you end up messing with your strategies for certain areas pretty much purely based on that, because you're really not going to die from a normal encounter.
Right.
I think it happened once, but the game specifically said, these things are bastards, try and avoid them. So I didn't.
Naturally.
I was thinking, I could take that, and it just owned me. But it's, I'm not sure that makes the grinds that interesting, but it makes boss fights interesting.
Well, I think every area that I've come to in Bravely Default normally has, the enemies between areas are probably varied enough that you're always doing a different tactic. Probably. Not that much. Once you've got your team deep into a job, so they're quite powerful, that maybe sort of lessens it. Although there are a couple of, it's you find enemies that do where they do brave or default. So it's there's this one type of enemy that I've been. In this one cave that I've been grinding in, there's one type of enemy that I have to use a completely different tactic for from all the other ones that I'm grinding on. It's all the other ones, you just set it up, and I just because this is another thing you can do. You can set it to auto, where it just repeats whatever your last inputs were.
Right. So
when I'm doing this grinding, I find this group of free shitty whatever they are, bats. Not quite bats, but then effectively. And then you enter your whole team's commands, and I know I can always wipe these things out in one turn, so I just set everyone's commands to maximum and just brave it and just kill them all in one go, and then set that to auto and just run around, and that's how I grind. But then in that cave, there's also one type of enemy which will quite often default on its first turn, and therefore block a lot of your damage. Right. Yeah, so if it survives your brave, and then you're just standing there for 4 turns taking hits, which is not good.
So what stops the bosses from braving 4 times immediately and immediately murdering you?
Well, they do that sometimes, but you just have to do. This is what you always do when you enter a new area. You always default on the first turn, or for the first 3 turns, just to see what the enemy does.
Yeah, I see. Okay, but
maybe
So if you default and the boss still kills you straight away, you need to grind, I guess.
Yeah, probably,
right?
Or respec your team slightly to different resistance.
Yeah.
Because the last big boss I fought was a real pain in the ass, because it comes down and I'm okay, what's this boss? Stand there for a couple of turns. It's it's doing a health draining attack and not much else. So I've built up my brave points by defaulting. So I'm okay, now attack. And you hit it and it does 1 damage. And I'm shit, well, it must be magic. It must be physical resistance, so I'll have to use magic on it or whatever. So I'm about to do that, but on the next turn, it just fucking explodes and kills everyone. I was okay. So then what I eventually figured out, after a couple of secondary times, I tried setting everyone to magic resistance to see whether the explosion was magic instead of physical, and that didn't really work. But I worked out what the trick is, is this boss is actually on a precisely timed cycle. So it spends 3 turns being invincible and draining your health. Then on the 4th turn, it transforms, which basically means its shield comes down. But then the turn after that, the explosion happens. Right. So as long as you always default on that turn, so you can at least survive the explosion, then you basically have an opportunity to hit it and heal yourself after that.
Before the shield comes back.
Yeah, before the shield comes back. And so it's always this 3-turn cycle of 3 turns where you can't hit it, then the explosion, then you can hit it for a while, and then it transforms back. So once you work that out, it's possible to survive the giant explosion.
It sounds like they've just made the boss fights like a puzzle mode.
Yeah, sort of.
Which is kind of cool.
That's a cool idea.
Apart from it still runs into sort of the classic problem with these kind of things where it's just there's no way of telling in advance. So you're always just going to have to walk in there without knowing it. Probably just die. And then try and work out what the actual tactic was.
A bit like my problem with the encounters in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
You have to play it through in order to really figure out what's coming so you know what to plan for.
Yeah.
And
then there was this other boss where... there was another boss that I was doing where it's a Swordmaster, and so the Swordmaster class is all about counters. So, like... And he was like super powerful. So if you accidentally hit him when he's got a counter ready, he just kills you.
Whoa.
So I was basically like, well, fine. So what I eventually worked out from that is like, you just have to default forever, because occasionally, instead of doing a counter, he just braves 3 times and does like physical attacks. Mm. So providing you can survive the physical attacks, you've got 3 turns where he's not doing anything.
A few attack phases.
But it kind of sucks when you're just like standing there and he's just going into counter pose over and over. It's like, come on, just attack me, goddammit!
He's being like Marth in Smash Bros.
Yep.
Counter everything.
Counter pose. So yeah, you have to think about it. And then the different classes that you get from like the jobs that you get by defeating you defeat these enemy bosses that are that class, and then you inherit their class basically. Mm-hmm. So like that Swordmaster is the last one that I got. So I've now got the Swordmaster job.
Cool.
But like a lot of these jobs have different. Well, not a lot of them. Several of these jobs have like completely different mechanics that are like really confusing. Like the Salve Maker, who basically just mashes items together to make new effects.
Oh, wasn't there a character in FF that did that?
Probably.
FF9, I think.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, that was that was like their limit break. You chuck 2 items and see what happens.
I do remember that. But that's like, so this whole class is basically about like mashing items together. So that opens up a whole new section of your encyclopedia where it's like, here's 89 different possible item combinations that you have to try and find. And that's kind of really annoying, because you're like sitting there in the menu and going like, okay, combine this thing with, and then you just could try each of the different options to see whether it does everything. So it's slightly annoying, kind of like, this weird one class that has this special way of playing. And then obviously, there's more obvious ones like the Swordmaster with its all counters.
There's quite a few jobs, isn't there?
Yes, there's like 24 apparently, which is quite a lot. And I've got probably half of them now, and I guess I'm about halfway through the game, probably.
But given that you're probably going to sink 50, 60 hours into a game
at least,
then it's good to have that variety. Because I guess that's one thing that like a lot of the big RPGs don't have really, is your ability to sort of, I don't know, mix things up. Like I guess some of the FFs you have plenty of characters, and so the idea is you switch those.
They're
around.
Basically a job to themselves.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's got less and less, I guess, as RPGs have evolved. Like in a way, like most of the big name ones sort of, I don't know, they shut down the number of options almost. Like I guess Final Fantasy is the obvious one for that, because most characters can do most things.
Yeah.
And in 13.2 there is only 2 characters. So
yeah. I mean, there are your characters do have like base stats that very, very slightly favour them towards different, like the magic one, the woman who's good at magic. So you like probably want to be mage classes.
Typical.
Yes, typical.
Well, I guess it's a JRPG, so yeah. Do you have a big sword? Well,
not really.
They're actually kind of realistic.
Yeah, it's like most of the weapons are fairly normal.
Interesting.
But yeah, aside from the mechanics, it is hella JRPG in places. Like the actual sort of story elements get hella Japanese occasionally, where it's like, we have to. In order to awaken the crystal, you have to be wearing special robes or whatever, because of course you do. I don't know. And those got destroyed when the temple was attacked. So you have to go to the.
You have to weave some robes.
Yeah, you have to go to the Sage of the Woods, who will weave the robes for you. And of course, he's a giant pervert. Like he's an old lecherous dude,
right?
Who's constantly, and he makes dresses which are like
That must have been much worse in the Japanese.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Where like,
I hear there has been some toning down, right?
Yeah. They adjusted outfits and the age descriptions for EU and US releases.
In the European version, they're older. But then, like, one of the guys on your team is, like, a hella womanizer, and that's just, like, totally obvious stereotypes going on. And then when those two guys meet up, it's like, oh, great, this is going to be fun.
But that's exactly what, like, anime and Japanese storytelling is kind of built on, isn't it? Like, they build their characters, like, really strong in a certain a couple of traits.
Yeah, but
and then it's like, about how they play off each other.
But this is, like, the most obvious cliches.
Yeah, I guess.
Whereas particularly when it gets to, like, when the town, which is, like, it used to be a pious town and it's been all corrupted now, so it's all neon and you know, they're all fancy and what, you know, all the women are concerned about their appearance and all this shit. And it's like, so how do you access the temple? You have, well, it's not actually how you access the temple strictly, but it's on the way to accessing the temple. You have to win a fashion contest. So enter the most beautiful woman. And we'll have to go to that guy, the sage guy, and get him to make a ridiculous outfit for you. Naturally. It gets hella Japanese at times. So yeah.
That's quite typical.
Yeah. So it's not exactly unpredictably cliched, and some of the stuff is like, some of the story, I mean, apart from the obvious Golden Sun comparison, where it's like, hey, this is, you kind of know where this story's going. They're going to light all the towers. Although I suspect that they're going to light all the towers and then something's going to go wrong.
As always.
Mainly because there's only 4 towers and there's 6 chapters.
Right.
That's kind of how you know.
Unless they have real difficulty lighting one of them and they're like,
I don't know about that.
Crap, we need to go back and get this thing.
Maybe. But so yeah, and then there's like, one of your characters, in another classic JRPG cliche, one of your characters has amnesia, and he has a mysterious journal that seems to predict the future, except it's not quite what happens. And I'm like, well, so what is this going to be, like parallel universes or time loops? All the classic Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
One of those things is probably going to happen. So yeah, it gets a bit like predictable, but it's okay. Don't really care about the story, it's all about the mechanics, and there's plenty of mechanics.
So, story, run of the mill, really.
Yeah.
Not bad. Good enough to keep you. But you guys, you really like the Golden Sun stuff, even the story, right? And this is the same story, so.
Well, maybe that's the problem, though. It's like we liked the Golden Sun story because that was the first time we'd seen that story, I guess.
Yeah, I guess Golden Sun kind of works on the back of its exchanges. Like, it didn't feel too Japanese how the characters interacted with each other.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. And I'm not saying that Japanese interaction storytelling is bad. But
it didn't have so many of the cliches.
It didn't feel typical.
Yeah.
It was the writing felt original just in the way that the characters talk to each other. Even if the story is kind of save the world like affair.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, the writing is the dialogue.
Yeah, it was almost like you see these bad guys repeatedly, but you're not quite sure what they're up to, and it's never super obvious what the main problem is, if you know what I mean. What the main
it's because it's like at the start of Golden Sun, you sort of get hinted at like what you have to do, but then as you go through the story, it's like, we actually doing the right thing?
Yeah,
and particularly, and then obviously in the second part of the Golden Sun game, they flip it, where it's like, now you're playing as the other team.
Yeah.
You're playing as the bad guys, essentially.
It's pretty interesting, like, how they played that stuff out.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a bit more straightforward, is it? In Bravely
Seems like it.
Okay.
But then speaking of, like, the storyline stuff, the other thing I probably should mention is, like, it's voice acted for, like, most of the main scenes.
Right.
Although it does seem kind of weird, like, obviously, I think they've had to compress the voice to fit it on the DS cart, because it's sort of noticeable, like, how compressed it is.
I don't think it was so bad.
It's probably because you were only hearing it through a sound system rather than headphones.
Yeah, maybe.
That probably makes it more obvious.
Yeah. Maybe speakers were making a better job of it, I don't know.
But the music is good. That's always important.
Is it in, because I saw, can you put it in, like, anime mode where it's voiced in Japanese, but you just have subtitles?
You can, if you want.
That might be better. I usually prefer anime that way, so because usually the English dubbing is terrible.
Yeah, that's not saying much, yeah.
But it's like, I don't know if the characters, it's kind of weird that if you turn the voice to Japanese, one of the guys sounds a lot older Which is weird considering that if you think about it compared to the Japanese version, compared to the EU version, in the EU version he's actually older, but he sounds younger.
Oh, of course.
Whereas in the Japanese version, he's younger, but he sounds older, which is kind of strange.
That does happen. Like they haven't been able to get a voice actor that's quite the same. Or...
Well, I don't think that was necessarily a voice acting problem. I think it was just like a weird, that's just something that the Japanese do. It's like he's 16, but he doesn't sound like it.
Mm.
I'm sure that would be the case for most Final Fantasy games or whatever.
Possibly.
If Final Fantasy VII had been voice acted.
He wouldn't have actually sounded 16. No. Not.
I can't remember what he sounds like from like Advent Children or something. I think he just sounds pretty
he's
generic.
Japanese then, isn't it?
Yeah. But even in that, even so.
Yeah, he was kind of generic.
Yeah. That almost sounds like he looks kind of thing. You can pretty much guess that.
Yeah. Oh, and then the other important thing to finish off about Bravely Default is the thing about the street passes that I was originally worried about.
Oh, yeah. Toe was playing that quite a bit, and she got a few street passes, and they're like pretty overpowered for her level when she got them.
Well, I mean, you can get it by street passes, or there's also you just get like 4 dudes off the internet per day, and you can send moves basically. And they can be overpowered, or they can be incredibly underpowered, depending on just like
where you are. Or, yeah.
Well, it depends like what move people are sending more than anything else. Like a lot of the time, you just get people that send special moves, and they're just like, "Oh, it does 9,999," because of course it would.
Match.
But then sometimes you'll get people who just send like a heal, which is kind of nice, or you'll get people who send like a move that doesn't actually do damage, like a steal or whatever.
Mm.
Or a buff. So really, it kind of depends on what people are sending. But I think on average, you're probably going to get a lot of special moves that are powerful. But
so when do you use it? Is it like in the middle of a battle?
Yeah,
you're like pushing the random button.
No, you can choose which one.
You know what's coming.
You can choose which one of the people that you've had.
Right.
But you can only use each one of them once unless they're actually your friend.
Okay.
In which case, you can refresh that by street passing with your friend and get whatever the most recent move they sent was.
Right.
But that's basically irrelevant. It's like you don't need it. And, as it turned out, the street passing wasn't necessary for rebuilding the town or whatever. Those 4 people you get off the internet per day is more than enough. I mean, I've already finished rebuilding the town, and I'm like probably halfway through the game.
Oh, okay. So that wasn't quite as long as we were expecting.
No, although that is because I actually did it. I did it for as much time as possible.
Mm.
It's like I left my DS closed every night with it running some long project.
I see. Yeah, you did. You played to it.
Yeah, but it's not that hard to do. It's just like set something up that takes 12 hours and then just leave it. Or set several things up that take 12 hours. So yeah, that's fine. Didn't really need the street passes. Done good.
Thumbs up.
Yep.
Recommended.
Cool.
And yeah, the general review consensus has been positive.
Yeah.
Like saying it's one of the 3DS's like best RPGs. Not that I'm sure that there's been many of note, but
exactly.
Always nice to have a good Final Fantasy game. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a bit thin
just
on the
not
ground
Final
lately.
Fantasy for some reason.
Yep.
Because isn't there a second one already in development called Bravely Second or something?
No. Well, maybe, but there's a move in the game called Bravely Second.
Oh.
Which is a dumb thing. It's basically like this is where the mysterious thing of this game that I don't actually need to talk about at all because I never actually used it or anything, but there's a microtransaction element where you have this special power called Bravely Second where you can basically just take an extra turn whenever using these special points. And if you want to get more of those special points, you can microtransact to get them.
Lame.
You can buy some Matrix,
or you can close the DS for 8 hours and get one for free. But I haven't used any of those yet. Although the weird thing about it is, like, there is sort of a legitimate reason why you might want to use Bravely Second, apart from it being like an emergency extra turn or whatever. Like, if you desperately need to res someone right fucking now. I think that was the one time I did use it, where it's like, I had a giant team heal on the way, but someone died before it hit, and I was like, well, I'll just pause it, get them up, and then have the heal happen. Use that Bravely Second. But then, like, the actual sort of weirdly legitimate way you might want to use Bravely Second is because normally, your attacks are limited to 9,999, but for some reason, if you're using Bravely Second, they're no longer limited, so you can do more than 9,999 damage. So it's like a bonus, I suppose. If you use Bravely Second to do an Uber attack, you can go past the normal attack limit.
Oh, this is awesome! Like I was right. There is an upcoming sequel called Bravely Second.
Yeah,
because the game was originally finished in 2012.
Well, yeah,
in Japan it's taken a while to
sub.
Yeah. But the best part is that it's actually been released twice in Japan. They did an updated version, but it's called For the Sequel.
Right.
It's just an awesome name. Bravely Default for the Sequel.
But it wasn't even a sequel.
But it's not a sequel, no. It's just a revision. And the UK and US versions are
based on that.
Based on the revision, yeah.
And there's also, you get, Square Enix is sending out basically bosses that you fight in your town. And they sent out a special one for Valentine's Day. Which I worked that out. It's like a boss appeared and I was like, oh, this one's from Square Enix. I wonder what it's like. Went and fought it and it was like... And then halfway through the battle, I suddenly realised, oh, this is the one for Valentine's Day that's coming up because it's like a giant dove that makes your characters fall in love with each other. I get it. About halfway through the battle, I finally worked it out. It's like, oh, this one is date, and they have a date of how long they exist on the server, basically, to be pulled. And this one was like, oh, it's from the 7th of February to the 14th of February.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I get it now. So yeah, there's that. I'm done with that. Talking about it. I'm not done with it.
No, we'll have more next time.
Still quite a lot of it to go.
And what else have you been playing? Anything else, or are we moving on to Robot Camp?
I don't think there's anything else, and we're going to have to move on because there's only 15 minutes of this podcast left.
It's Rob time.
I've played quite a bit.
We played Guild Wars.
We did play Guild Wars. That was the joint operation.
Yep.
We did the marionette boss,
which was kind of dumb.
It was pretty dumb.
Although at least we succeeded once.
Yeah, it was kind of okay.
It was
kind of fun to see one of these massive events that loads and loads of people could take part in at the same time.
And it was nice that there was enough people when we did it that we could succeed.
Yeah, and even the second time was pretty close.
Yeah,
it was still interesting.
Okay,
but it was just a massive sort of. A kind of a collaborative boss fight where you all get split into 5 different lanes, and each lane has to succeed.
It's like this
in order to move forward.
It's sort of this weird combination of everyone, a big mass of people working together, and then still almost individual. Because it's when you're doing the lanes, it's there's 5 lanes, and you probably want about 20 people per lane. And the idea of the lanes is you have to stop the enemies getting into a portal, which basically charges up a super weapon that ends the fight when it gets charged.
Yeah,
right.
So you're basically playing tower defense.
Yeah,
for the majority of the time. And then every now and then your turn comes around, and then your lane is instructed, "Quick, get into the portal," and you go in, and then your team gets split into 5 different arenas. With a different boss in each of them simultaneously.
It might be the same boss in each of them.
Yeah,
I think I've decided that that's how it works.
Yeah, I wasn't ever 100% sure on that. But yeah, but while the marionette is stomping around you, and it becomes kind of crazy at that point.
So it's you're going you're spending most of the time with so a lot of the time all 5 lanes are just defending, and that's 100 odd people. And then when your lane gets called and you go through, you're basically splitting down into probably 4 people.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you fuck up at that point, you are the shame of the server.
Yeah.
If your little boss arena fails to kill the boss and destroy the power generator, everyone is pissed.
It doesn't tell you which lane has failed, but you do get a big notification on screen saying a lane has failed.
Yeah,
failed.
But it provided the super weapon isn't charged yet, they'll get another shot at it eventually.
Yeah. So that's it's quite interesting how you can prolong the fight, that whole tower defense element. It's if you don't let any of the enemies reach the portals, if all the lanes are successfully defending...
In theory, it could just keep going.
Unless a lane fails, in which case it automatically adds a bit to the super weapon charge.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite a nice, I like that boss compared to some of the other mass bosses.
It was mechanically interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't think it lives up to some of the initial hype that Guild Wars 2 had. Like, you need teams doing different things in order to make this work.
Well,
because it's basically 5 teams doing the same thing, but separate from each other.
Yeah.
So it's never quite. It's the whole hype thing was about that dragon boss, wasn't it? Where it's like, oh, you need these guys taking down.
Well, that one you do need teams doing different things. It's just no one does it.
I haven't seen it.
Every time I've tried that, there's been virtually no one there, and it immediately fails because it's just too hard for our. And also our server is quite a small one, so a lot of the time we don't have enough people to do the big things.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a shame.
It's just like you have to get in there early, which is why I was worried about the Marionette one, because we came in at like practically the last day.
Yeah.
But luckily people were still doing it.
It was still doing it. You get, I suppose it's 2 hours of, well, not a solid 2 hours, but it's pretty good monster fighting during that time, lots of...
Well, you get decent loot if you win. That was the
cool.
main... That's probably why people were still doing it.
You got a lot of loot.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
Yep.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, good fun. So Guild Wars 2 still keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll carry on with our RPG front, I suppose, so we can do the direct comparison stuff. Like, as I said, I've played about 12 hours of Final Fantasy XIII-2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of into it.
Okay.
So
this isn't Lightning Returns. That's 3, isn't it?
That's the 3rd in the series, which is yet to come out.
Yeah, because my brother made the website for that like a year ago or something, and it's still not come out or whatever.
Yeah, anyway. I mean, I saw that at Eurogamer, where they're mixing up the fight system and stuff for that. Sort of played a little bit like an action game in a way.
Right. But anyway, 2.
Yeah, 13-2. It's an interesting one. Overall, my impression is it's a bit of a weird game. Just conceptually, it's kind of strange because it's set directly after the events of 13, which, by all accounts, were a bit fucking mental to begin with. Like, all right, spoiler alert for a really old game. The game basically ends with 2 of the main characters who you discover used to be inhabitants of the planet below Cocoon, which is called Grand Pulse, which is supposed to be like a sort of Badlands that no one goes to and is kind of off limits.
But naturally people were living there all along.
Yeah, naturally people were living there. So these 2 people that come from there, at the end of the game, basically end up turning to crystal, forming an enormous pillar that eventually holds up the sphere of Cocoon, saving it from crashing into Pulse, therefore saving basically all humanity. But why that happened was never really explained. They supposedly sacrificed themselves to do this.
Well, lots of those dudes turn to crystal, don't they? Because it's like when they fail their mission or whatever.
Yeah, there was a sort of like a tie between the Fal'Cie, which are like the gods of the world, turning people into l'Cie that have magical powers and had something to accomplish but weren't always clear what that something was that they called a focus. And if they achieved it, you got turned to crystal. So presumably the explanation is that Fang and Vanille, as it were, turned into crystal at just the right moment because they completed their focus, whatever the fuck it was, and their crystal just happened to be really massive and in the right place.
Yeah.
But, that's as vague as the description gets. The rest of the story in 13, as confusing and convoluted and basically acronym and glossary requiring as it was pretty crap. It's like this linear, just sort of meandering, basically, of stuff, and it was kind of rubbish. So this one kind of ignores all of it.
Okay.
Like, it just sort of goes, well, Lightning's not around, and Sarah's the only one that remembers it for some reason. Oh, hey, some dude turns up, time travel. That's pretty much the story.
Okay.
So this Noel guy turns up, like whilst in this, they call it New Bodom, which is this place they're starting to inhabit on the surface of Pulse. These monsters just start materializing out of thin air after a meteorite lands, which introduces the idea that, oh, hey, we're not doing the we're bringing back random battles, guys, because monsters
we've made up a reason for it.
Yeah, because monsters can just materialize now.
Okay, rather than you see them on the path ahead of you, you run into.
Yeah, they've got this kind of weird hybrid system. So you're walking around in the world, and the monsters materialize around you, in the world, and you could, if you don't touch them, you can avoid fighting with them, providing you can get far enough away from them.
Okay.
However, if they're close enough, you have this clock that ticks down, and if it goes into the red, you're forced to fight them, and apparently you don't get a retry state if you're in that, but I've totally failed when in a red zone, and it's just let me retry the fight, and it's been fine. So I don't know if that just doesn't work or if it's been miscommunicated or whatever, but it's supposed to be a bad thing. But if you get the ability to, if you purposefully attack them, like you can press X to sort of swing your sword around, you can go into a preemptive attack state. If you go into it, which is pretty much all the time, because it's like, I want to grind up these enemies. So provided they don't materialize and charge right into you as soon as they do so, you can get it gives you basically haste at the start of the fight.
Always helpful.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Haste.
So yeah, that's kind of an interesting system. It mixes it up a little bit because it's for the people that like random battles, they're back. For the people that don't like random battles, you can kind of avoid them. So it's sort of interesting. So going back to the sort of plot elements, it's kind of strange because it's kind of lacking in an overall plot. You sort of end up going into jumping through time in an attempt to find lightning. This other dude who you meet, Noel, has been sent by lightning, and I'm not really sure why. He's just been sort of like, find my sister. It's like, okay. But then, like, how do you get back to lightning? And what are we supposed to be doing? Why are you finding my sister? Why aren't you coming with me? That kind of stuff. She seems to be fighting this dude called Caius in this place called Valhalla, and shit's going down.
Okay.
I don't really understand any of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, like, the main way the story has played out thus far has just been you jumping between time zones, solving paradoxes, as the game describes it, where it's like, something weird's going on, make it stop happening.
Like punching stuff.
And all these things are kind of separated into their own little stories, not necessarily telling a big story.
Oh, that's kind of cool, kind of episodic, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of interesting, but at times you can't help but think, I want a bigger purpose to this. And like the same problem I have with The Last of Us and things like this. I kind of want a bigger progression.
Well, I guess that's what you expect from Final Fantasy, right?
Yeah. Where exactly is the hook right now, other than we're going to find lightning and we're going to go somewhere? And
well, it might turn out, it might appear eventually. You might find out that all this stuff is important all along.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's
all along.
I mean, yeah, I suppose the hook is at the moment that there's this Caius dude and there's this Seeress called Yule who there seems to be many of them that all look the same.
Time travel.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing. And apparently she dies a lot, and Caius has seen that a lot. Yeah, sort of randomly. So presumably something will play into that, and there's this mysterious thing at a place called the Colosseum, which just seems to be a big ball of shadow that goes, leave. And it's like, well, what the shit was that about? And there's this random ruins you can go to. What's that about? And this random place to be a checkerboard floor that I can't explore yet. What's that about? And none of that really... no one's really attempted to try and explain any of that, because I don't think the main characters know anything about it. You sort of turn up and go, well, we can't do anything here, and bugger off again.
Okay.
So which leads into another one of the plus points, and that the actual structure of the game is a little less linear than 13, because that was one of 13's major problems, that there was really only one way to go through it until you reached Pulse, and then everything opened up quite a bit. Mm-hmm. In this, you get like the areas are designed with more routes in mind, more exploration to try and find hidden stuff. And you get hidden stuff, which is sort of like not visible, and you have to use your Moogle powers to reveal it. Which becomes a sort of like puzzly element, I suppose, sometimes to try and figure out how to get the stuff in a sort of classic Final Fantasy sort of way. You know, what path do I have to take to get to that chest, kind of thing, or how do I get up there? Which is then sometimes removed by the fact that eventually you gain an ability to throw your Moogle, so you can just throw it at the treasure and it'll bring it back. But it's as I say, it's kind of cool in all those respects. It's just, it doesn't feel like it ever reaches the height of what a Final Fantasy game should. You know,
but honestly, did 13
Oh, no, definitely not. 13 didn't, but 13-2 was specifically like their attempt to say, okay, we listened to what you've said, we're going to fix it.
Okay. And yet it's kind of not epic enough.
No, it's sort of almost too light-hearted, almost too casual.
Although, like, 10-2 was kind of more light-hearted than 10, right? I guess maybe it's definitely in that tradition.
It probably is, yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be a lot shorter as well than the main 13. Like, GT basically said it comes in at about 20 hours. I think it's going to be more than that on my playthrough, but they also investigate interesting concepts like you visit the same areas multiple times but in different time periods, and sometimes after solving a paradox you go to an alternative timeline version of that place. So some things are different. Like, one of the characters from 13 that I've actually met is Hope, and annoyingly.
Not Hope, god damn it.
But he's not quite so whiny as he was before. He's like a scientist or something now.
Okay.
And he's like, but I've met him 2 different times, and each time it's like this is the first time they've met since the events of 13 in 2 different timelines. So that area is different. And it's so there's some interesting ways that can play out. And there's also a mechanic where you can reset the timeline for a location you've been to. So it's as if you've never went there. So you can play it again and in theory do different things. Now, I haven't attempted any of that stuff because I'm not 100% sure how much flexibility you get there. I don't know if that's just conversation trees, where normally you get like 4 possible things you can say and you're only allowed to pick one of them at any one moment. Yeah. Like whether picking other conversation trees causes a difference, or if some of them actually have, you can do this in a different way if you do this. I honestly don't know. But apparently that's the way to get to an alternate ending and stuff if you go down that route. And there are reasons to return to areas because you may not have an ability that lets you get all the treasure or to complete missions for certain people. And some of the townsfolk, I suppose, you talk to will ask you to do things that are in a different time zone or you can't achieve in your time zone. So you have to visit the same area in a different time period. Like, we broke this thing. It's terrible. So you go, I know how to solve that. So you can, if you've got like that time zone earlier, you can go and steal the thing and then give it to them in the future or something. Totally messing with it.
It's always fun, that kind of crap.
Exactly. And in that respect, it is kind of interesting. They're sort of messing with it and it's kind of weird. And because of that, maybe that's why we don't really know anything about where the story's going or if there's a bigger story, because it's so caught up in trying to explain the concepts of paradoxes. And if you change the future, you change the past. And you're like, wait, isn't that the wrong way around? What? All that stuff. They really try and drum that home in pretty much every bit of conversation they have. It's something about, time travel is crazy, isn't it?
Pretty much.
So I'm sort of in. And I don't... But its presentation is like typically is pretty much identical to 13. So if you didn't dig that style, you're not going to dig the style here.
I thought the style was okay. It was just like, the way the levels were corridors. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's still some of that. And you do revisit areas, some of which are just lifted straight out of 13, but some of them are sort of using the assets sort of but with a different maze design, if you know what I mean. Like a lot of the areas, like the Sun-Left Waterscape, you revisit the Yashas Massif, as it's called. You go back to the Archaeot Steppe is the one I've just unlocked, which they've actually made look nicer than the one from 13 because it's got like swaying grass and stuff. And mysterious cactuar statues that teleport you. What's that all about?
Of course.
Cactuars. But most of the... I guess that's part of the problem. One of the... it is kind of a problem, but it's not one you should really... It's not one I didn't expect. It was the reused asset count is pretty high. So pretty much all of the monsters are just what you saw before. And... So yeah, I guess that's the other major thing I haven't really spoken about. Combat is mostly the same. Except you only really have 2 characters now. So you don't have to manage your team so much. But you have a third member of the team that takes the form of a charmed monster. So pretty much any monsters you meet in the field you can tame. And then bend them to your will. But the monster only has one role. and you're only allowed to take 3 monsters into battle. So in your paradigm system, you have a sort of limited range of what you can assign across your paradigm choices. Which is, I guess, is where some of the monsters level differently. Which is, and you have to like when you complete a fight, some of the spoils are like items that you feed to your creatures to make them level.
Naturally. Feed your mags.
But yeah,
feed your chows.
But the monsters will level in a different way. Like some of them will can only have one loop of the crystarium, as they call it, and then they're done. And it's like they've reached the top. They've reached as far as they can go, and you're like, crap.
Just like they're shitty monsters. You need better ones.
Yeah. Well, it's like they give you like 4 little descriptive names for some of them, and like the ones I look for where it says late bloomer.
That must be our time, isn't it? With those birds.
Yeah.
Yep, indeed.
What alarm was that?
It was called Summit.
Summit.
Okay.
There was Summit in that song.
Summit in that song.
Mysterious. Yes.
So Rob will have to complete his thoughts next time on the other games that you played that I know that we didn't talk about.
What were we missing out on?
I've got to try to remember now.
I'm just about to talk to them.
I know, but I can't remember now. I've been disrupted by Summit.
Yeah.
Literally. I was going to talk about Tomb Raider. I was playing that.
Oh, have you? Great.
Yeah, amongst other things.
Can we just go long?
It's already like, how much longer do you want it to be?
No reason.
I've got. What were your other things?
I played a bit of Civ. Played a tiny bit more Beyond, but I can avoid talking about that.
Yeah.
I played some other stuff on PC, I'm sure. I finished a Rogue Legacy New Game Plus run.
A run. Okay, cool. That game is good. Game of the year.
Fantasy XIII-2 is the main thing I needed to talk about.
Yeah.
Cool. We got it.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Do you have actually anything to say about Civ even?
Well, as predicted, I lost the game.
Right.
But in the end, it was much, much closer than I anticipated.
Oh.
I ended up losing to science by 2 turns.
Oh.
I had 2 turns to complete the thing that I wanted to do, the last piece, in my capital city.
And someone else did it.
And someone else did it. The Arabs did it.
That was nice.
It was, yeah, but it got quite dramatic towards the end because the Dutch and the Swedish decided to attack me again at random, as they do. But the Swedish were super crappy still, like after the last time I decimated them. So it's like, well, screw you guys, I'm just walking you this time. I was nice before. And the Dutch just sent in an enormous naval fleet that for some reason was super easy to kill.
Because ships suck in Civ 5.
They outnumbered me greatly, but somehow I could just take them out. Like I had a few subs.
Yeah, subs help.
So yeah, it got kind of tense at the end. But
did you just like reload an autosave and try and find a way you could get that last?
I probably could have done had I not. I probably could have dialed back my military focus during the fight against the Dutch and the Swedes, and got a bit more research.
We just needed to go into that city and try and see if you could shuffle your citizens around to squeeze out a few extra production points instead of food or something.
Yeah. Because I was building the ship parts as soon as they got researched.
Yeah. I mean, at that point in the game, you're practically you're basically building shit as soon as it's done.
So it's a balance between just getting that last bit of research in the last bit of production.
Yeah.
Just need to refocus slightly, and I would have had it. But I knew it was getting close, like surprisingly close, because I thought the Arabs were miles ahead of me on the tech tree. And as it turns out, I think they just delayed building stuff.
Right.
I think I got lucky a little bit.
Because the computer players suck, probably.
Yeah. They probably should have finished a lot quicker, but I tried distracting him at the end by trying to send, when I realised it was going to be close, I tried sending every unit I had into the Arab territory to try and see if I could just derail their progress slightly.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about the rocket thing at the end of Civ 5 now, is that if you're not building it in the actual capital city, you actually have to send the parts to the thing, and they're an actual physical unit that theoretically can get destroyed.
Yeah, if I had a nuke, which I thought about this time, if I had thought of it earlier, if I could build a nuke and just put it on their cap, maybe I would catch the bit of rocket as it was being transferred.
Or just delay the production in the capital enough.
Yeah, something like that.
By fucking up all the terrain.
Yeah. That ended up being kind of entertaining. And I'm now in 2 minds about whether to start again or just do leave it for ages and then try again, try another run. I'm not sure. I kind of feel like it's cheating to reload a save and do it again, even though the game was like 33 hours long.
Naturally.
But and,
but you don't want your scoreboard to be corrupted. It's the important thing about Civ 5.
Scoreboard.
The scoreboard at the end, where it's like, you were as good as some shit guy because your score was bad. Where they rate you against historical figures.
I didn't see that.
Did you?
No.
That's kind of a cool feature.
I wonder who I was good at.
I think the best I ever got was like Alexander the Great or something. It's like
that's pretty damn good. Yeah,
it's great. It's in his name.
I think that was maybe the 3rd or 4th rank on that historical figure chart. Even though Alexander the Great is one of the guys in Civ, he's the leader of Greece. Which is so weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Civ 5.
Oh, that's the thing I should talk about.
Yeah.
Saladcast got...
Oh, yeah, this thing.
I actually checked the Saladcast Gmail account.
Yeah, for maybe the first time ever.
Why?
Sort of accidentally, because I was on the YouTube channel uploading our Final Fantasy video. Subtle plug.
Yeah.
And then accidentally, I went to check my email, but I was still signed into the Saladcast account. And it's like, you've got all these emails from YouTube. And it's like, all right, what the hell is it? That one's not from YouTube. What is this? So the Saladcast actually got contacted, apparently on the basis of us knowing racing games from our videos, which is dubious to begin with, because we've only really done Need for Speed, Sonic Riders, and something else.
Flat Out, your terrible.
Oh yeah, my terrible recording of Flat Out. Yeah, because this was back in the OBS days when we hadn't figured it out right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, you guys seem to know racing games. Why don't you try? Why don't you have a beta key to our game?" And it's like, "All right then." So I've been trying to play it.
What game is it again?
It's called Quantum Rush. It's
right.
From what I saw of like the alpha video they've put out, I kind of looked at it and thinking, all right, you've got my interest.
Because it looks vaguely like Wipeout.
It's like a cross between Wipeout and F-Zero, and it's like, okay, you have my attention, but I've pretty much not been able to play it. It's like 2 beats. So it looks like it's going to be a free-to-play game with fairly basic sort of research and craft progression, but then it turns into like what looks like a 16-player like combat race with hovercars. Except, I can tell you this because I was reading the terms like earlier while we were recording, like, and I can't see anything about not being able to talk about the beta. So they've never said anything to me. So what the hell? Let's go for it. And it's, I don't know. Right now, as I say, it's been kind of unplayable because the one time I got into a lobby with people in it, the lag was quite literally 1 second of input delay.
Right.
Whoa.
Which is weird, to say the least. It was very, very hard to get around the track. And regardless of that, even if it does work, the handling is kind of boring.
Okay.
Which is a bit of a problem. It's like, it's too simple. It's like it's too direct. It's like, you know how F-Zero is really responsive and really direct, but you've got that sort of slidey mechanic to... I mean, it's got air brakes, but they just make you turn faster.
Okay.
Oh, right,
it's
okay.
Like, it doesn't really have... it doesn't have any of Wipeout's momentum-y stuff and doesn't have any of the nuance of the F-Zero handling. And it's not as fast. Probably is either. At least in the state I'm in. There's other tiers, but I can't get to them because I can't race to gain more money.
Right.
So at this point, I may be missing some of it, but it's just not working. So, but anyway,
we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
But yes, thanks very much to Game Art Studio for just even considering us. I'm
sure that was just a big old spam.
Probably, yeah.
To every YouTube account that had games on it.
Probably, quite probably.
Interesting, nonetheless.
Yeah, it's sort of like, have we got recognition for the shit we make? But
I think we definitely get a hell of a lot more recognition for those stupid videos than we do for any casting that we do.
Apparently. Probably should need to plug the Saladcast a little more on the videos.
Yeah.
Even though every video ends with go to happysalad.net.
Yeah, but people are lazy. They want to click on the things in the right-hand side of the bar next to the video they've just watched, I guess. But it's really annoying the way that YouTube changed what it put in that box, because now it like puts stuff that it thinks you'll like in general rather than things related to that video at the top, which is really
it's
fucking
sort
annoying.
of a weird mix, isn't it? It's like it's sort of related, but most of the time then it will just go off and like link something from Giant Bomb or something.
Exactly, and it's like, well, okay, but I wanted stuff related to this match.
Yeah.
Anyway,
a little bit hard to stay on a flow.
Indeed.
Yeah, so that wraps me up.
Good.
Cool.
We only spent like an extra 10 minutes.
Yeah. Unless Dan wants to talk about Tomb Raider. Come on.
Well, I only just really started it, so there isn't much to say. I'm not like hugely enthused. Like I'm gonna keep playing it, definitely. But it's like I don't know. I'm not really gripped by
Where are you?
Oh God, where am I?
Have you fought some dudes yet?
Yeah, I fought some dudes. I killed the first dude with the quick time event.
Yeah.
I fought my way through a fiery village thingy.
Oh, that's kind of cool, that sequence.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It had some sort of stealth element to it, which was kind of all right. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the start of Far Cry 3, but not as cool.
Not weird enough.
No, but because that really had that amazing character of Far Cry 3 at the start, the crazy evil dude. Whereas this doesn't really, like, the characterization is not. I don't know. I don't really like her.
She's quite moany at the start of the game.
Well, I can understand. Like, obviously, but I found myself just going. I understand that it's supposed to make it feel like, okay, she's totally out of her depth and she's really hurt and all this and it's all a disaster and stuff. And when she is like whining a little bit, it's like, it kind of makes sense. She's just like, oh God, this is a disaster. And it's like, well, actually, yeah, it probably would be if you put yourself in that situation. But for me, I just want to get control back. So I'm just like, get a grip, Lara. Just get up. I want to move you with my control stick rather than you being in a cutscene. That's my motivation. I want to play the game. Get a grip and stand up and start walking.
Stop. I mean, it does get better from where you are.
I think it will.
It is kind of like, especially at that start, it's very much this is the only way you can go.
Exactly, but that's fine and that's cool. I mean, it'll open up a little bit. I expect. I can tell from the campsite system and the way some of the areas are slightly opening up that it's not totally a corridor. But I don't even mind corridors if they're well constructed.
I mean, there are sections. There are definitely sections of the game where it's trying to tell story where it forces you down that road. But every now and then you hit these like bigger areas.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting to explore.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It seems to run okay. I quite like the bow. It's fine.
You pretty much use that for the entire game if you want.
Yeah, exactly. Like it seems to be quite effective against enemies, especially when you start upgrading it and shit.
Yeah, it's perhaps not so good once you get like starting to get rushed by several dudes when they're aware of your presence, but
yeah, exactly.
When you're at range, it's pretty handy.
Yeah, so I was quite enjoying it, but I was thinking to myself, am I just jaded about like big production, like cutscenes and do I just not care anymore? Do I only like indie games now or some shit? I was getting a bit confused. Although it's
has
not
crossed my mind actually quite a lot over the last, I don't know, I guess year or so.
But then what I actually ended up doing was, because I felt like, because there was a little bit of shooting, but I was like, for a while now I've been thinking I kind of want to play a shooter a little bit. I want to shoot stuff a bit because I haven't been doing it much. So I started playing Max Payne 3 again, and that has really long cutscenes and stuff, but somehow, and the character is quite whiny, but somehow it's so well done that I didn't mind as much. It's like, actually, I don't mind watching this because this is kind of a unique setting, with the South America stuff and somewhat interesting characters and story. It's not just abandoned, we're on a. How many times have I washed up on a Pacific island that's like got old like World War II planes, hanging from parts of the jungle and shit, and there's bad paramilitary dudes on there for no reason.
It is the adventure games equivalent of FPS as World War II.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, where did it start? With like Far Cry or something? The first one, maybe? I don't know. Or probably before that. But even so, it's like, geez.
Far Cry was a shooter, but,
yeah,
the stuck on an island thing has kind of always been there, hasn't it, for that sort of game?
I guess, yeah. Anyway. That's
because
fine.
it's a very convenient tool, isn't it?
Well, it's convenient for making a game where it's just like there's sea around it. There's no map out here. We can just stop you.
Yeah,
that's true.
You don't have to create random artificial barriers like Skyrim.
Yeah,
it's like, look, a mountain that for some reason you can't walk over.
Well, yeah, even like Infamous, the city is a big set of islands, and it's.
So that's what, and I've been quite enjoying Max Payne. I remembered that the it's not very well balanced, like mechanically. So I remembered that, and I just set it to easy, and it's a lot more fun. You know how some games are more fun on hard mode because they're more of a challenge, and some games are just more fun on easy because they're just frustrating on hard or whatever. Like you can't. I mean, Halo is clearly more fun on hardcore than it is on easy. It's really boring.
Yeah. You want it on that level between, was it heroic, isn't it? But the one between
heroic
and legendary.
Heroic, that's the one. Whereas this Max Payne, it's like if you set it to easy, it doesn't make the enemies any easier or any less of them. It just gives you more ammo and health pickups and bullet time, and that's all you need to make it more fun. So cool, just set it to easy. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I've been doing. What else? And I also played something else. I can't remember. Oh yeah, I played. Speaking of going back to old games, but when I was needing to play a shooter, I played the start of Black Mesa Source again, and that's still awesome. Super cool. Anyway, and that's free, so download that if you haven't. And they still haven't released the Zen part, so
actually.
But you don't really need that, do you? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, cool. So that's it, and I'll play more Tomb Raider for next time, I guess.
Yeah, as I say, it does get better. The story doesn't, but the gameplay does.
Yeah, well, that's the important part, really.
It's like the point you're at. The story is kind of non-existent anyway.
Well,
so
yeah, it's just a woo. But I don't mind the story parts. I mean, it's barely even starting. But it's like I just didn't feel much sympathy for. I just didn't engage with the character of Lara really.
No,
because it's like I was like, get a grip. You're Lara Croft. Get up. I want to run around.
I guess it's hard, isn't it, from a gameplay perspective, to feel like for a weak and moany character because you as the player going, right, what shit am I going to do next?
Yeah.
When's the cool bit coming?
Yeah, when's the cool bit coming? Especially when that character is you. I mean, it's all right if there's a vulnerable character or whatever that you have to. I don't know. It's annoying to do escort missions, obviously, but it's okay to have characters that aren't you that are, vulnerable and stuff. But when it's like you are a bit useless and you're the guy playing or girl playing, it's a bit like, well, come on.
I mean, you can do it, but you need to, I don't know, you need to pull off something special to make that work.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of a game that does that really well. Usually you're in control and powerful no matter who you are or what the situation. Like if you're Commander Shepard or whatever.
I guess Uncharted 3 just had the drug section.
Right.
Where like Nathan's just totally high.
But he's still Nathan Drake.
Just made the world all super wobbly.
He's still super cool though.
You're sort of imagining bad guys, and you're still doing cool stuff, I suppose. But. I
guess Max Payne had like those nightmare sequences. No, they were terrible in terms of actual gameplay, but they were quite cool. Kind of.
They had narrative
story wise, yeah. Where you had no idea what was going on and everything was messed up and weird.
Why is my path a blood trail?
It was so good
in
conceptually
space.
And then so bad mechanically where you had to like do first person, you had to do like
third
platforming
person.
On blood trails, which was the stupidest thing ever. Anyway, that's one thing Max Payne 3 misses is it doesn't have all the weird, insane mysticism crap from Max Payne 1.
Mm.
All that weird, wasn't there a bit? Yeah, the occult stuff. There was a room in Max Payne 1 where there was like an occult sacrifice where someone was like, murdered on a pentagram or something, and then there was some graffiti of there was some Buffy the Vampire Slayer based graffiti, I think, saying, Buffy is lame or something. I can't remember. This is real occult. It's like that was quite hilarious. Oh man, that's a dated reference from an old game. I think that game came out actually slightly before The Matrix, right? Because they kind of had bullet time before it managed to get patented or whatever.
I don't know, actually. Yeah.
It was roughly the same time.
Because it kind
of did have the at the end of Max Payne, it kind of had a kind of lame version of the lobby scene from the in the very last level of the game.
And that used to be it used to be a part of 3D Mark, where they used the Max Payne engine to make a lobby scene.
The lobby scene, yeah, that was cool. That was better than the part that actually appeared in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
just trying to look it up actually, because I know The Matrix came out 99.
Yeah, 99.
The game was 2001.
Well, Max Payne 1?
Yeah.
Oh shit! I thought it was
a couple of years after Matrix.
Oh, interesting. Okay, fair enough.
Came out on the Game Boy Advance. Man, that must have been terrible.
Yeah, what even the fuck was that?
Oh, and Max Payne 3 looks freaking awesome. It probably still looks better than Tomb Raider, although that might be my system.
It's probably more art than technical, I think.
It's technically pretty good, though.
Yeah, it's animation rather than raw polygons, I think, with Max Payne, from what I've seen of it anyway.
Right, okay, yeah.
It's like it's good looking, but it's not. If you were to look at it on a purely technical level, I think like Tomb Raider kind of just outdoes it, just in how some of that water looks and how some of that.
Right.
I don't know. Are you able to put Tress effects on?
No, I didn't switch that on because I didn't think it was worth it. But...
The frame rate halver.
Yeah, the frame rate halver.
Actually, it wasn't that bad on my machine, actually. But
I think it's switched on in the Xbox One.
But the definitive edition, that's due out very shortly.
Yeah, I think it's out soon.
Maybe next week, or maybe it might already be out actually.
Anywho, that's me. So I think we'll wrap up this podcast now. We've gone way over.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Catch you next time on the Saladcast, and we'll have more crazy shit for you to listen to. More discussions of black holes and shit. Probably not.
Science.
Science. And we might even have a new theme tune before long. So because it's time for season.
Yeah, it's still a little while. It's like mid-March.
But we'll get there. We'll get there. It's in the works, and there might even be some. There might even be some
outtakes.
Outtakes, indeed.
Well,
that might take a bit longer.
No, you didn't.
Did they ever post season 3?
I don't think you did.
Oh.
Make sure you check out our YouTube page for more of Zach and Rob playing Final Fantasy VII, which is more entertaining than you'd think.
We should really do some more video. I was thinking, like, perhaps going back, perhaps we should do some more N64 stuff, or like stuff we really enjoyed. Like maybe we'd break out and just do a playthrough of Lilac Wars or something. Or
well, that's something you really enjoyed.
Do you not like?
I never played it.
Oh, well, maybe we get you to do a playthrough of Lilac Wars.
Yeah, but then that wouldn't be that interesting because I'd be not as good.
I guess, but
I wouldn't know all the tricks to going the weird routes.
Yeah,
video content to come. So look out for that, and we'll catch you next time.
So bye
bye.
Any sign off sound today?
Black holes.
Black holes. The blonde thing. Yeah.